Good morning, Race. KJ here for day 15 in testimony in the Lori Daybell trial. Uh, Nate Eaton has reminded all of us if you tack on a week of that, it is actually day 20. And the Utah medical examiner, Dr. Eric Christensen, will be back on the stand for cross-examination. Yesterday, he testified about bruises found on Tammy Daybell's body during her autopsy. And KJ tried to put something on the community wall. And I got a lot of really interesting comments. And I also updated that blank autopsy photo along with the sketch that some said was kind of like mine that I had posted, but I don't think so. And I got mixed up on whether that was the front side or the back side. Along with that, this morning I put a poll on here asking who murdered Tammy Daybell. And a lot of you seem to think this was the dynamic duo of Alex Cox and Chad Daybell. My mind has been swirling about the testimony of yesterday, specifically about the hair that was matched to the hussy there. Some people are concerned, and I've seen it as well, about, this could be just she was the mother of JJ. But let me just be clear, okay? We know how much duct tape was on JJ before they put the black plastic on him. We didn't find any Alex's hair. We didn't find Lori's hair. The bottom line is that hussy is guilty. She helped Alex cover him up. That is my opinion. So everyone has a right to their opinion, but the bottom line is what the hell's her hair doing there? Some people say, well, she was the mother and this was over, according to her, like anybody really wants to believe a damn word she says. If it was in her apartment, there's hair everywhere, and I get it. But the bottom line is how in the world do you get a hair stuck on duct tape and she's nowhere at... she's got to be where her hair is, right? Somewhere around where her hair has been. So, we all have our theories. We all have our hypotheses. I thought it was damning. I think the jurors will think it's damning. Good morning, Jody Allen, Kristen 09, Maraz Testola, Holly Tomlinson, Heather Hartley, Lisa Taglaboo, Marilyn, Tara Santmyers. Good morning, y'all. Nicole P, Somebody, Susan Purdy, Yin Yang, Terry Ward, Jennifer Sukup, THX, Cynthia Mayer, Karen Holland, Cindy K, John Shepard, Vixtex, Leslie Hagman, Bismo Funyuns, Olive Heatley, Cell 62, Jenny, Nadine, Alley Cat, Dana Gopher, Mother Bear, Amazing Lynn, Beach Lady, Diane McDonald, PJ Keith, April Gann, Casey, Amy, Dogmon, Carolyn, Dana B, Liza Joe, Debbie Hersco. Y'all, yesterday was some blockbuster things in my view, okay? That's just what I say. Now, the courtroom gallery is full again. I'm sitting next to a man who drove 6 hours from Dallas, says Nate Eaton. Dales, Oregon, sorry. He was shocked he was able to get a ticket to be in the actual courtroom. Plenty of seats remain open every day in the Ada County and Madison County overflow rooms. The bailiff is giving instructions to the courtroom. Phones must be silenced. No photos or videos and no eating. Larry and Kay Woodcock are here. Defense attorneys and prosecutors are at their table. And Lori Daybell is dressed in black today and is chatting with her lawyers. And she needs to keep wearing that black to match her black ass heart. That's what I'm talking about. Vic's text talking about Tammy's bruises. And many have talked about why didn't the Brenda Dye, the coroner, and her deputy see this? And then some even went on to say, why didn't the funeral home say anything? The bottom line is the woman had been held down. She was restrained. There's no other reason why she should have had those bruises. And it just makes me beside myself to even try, because y'all know me, y'all know old KJ. I'm a very visual person. When I read something, it pops into my mind, and I'm going to just tell y'all as I look at you, it's been hard to shake those thoughts, and to also shake the thought that the mother of that precious little boy was there, in my opinion, helping Alex put that last layer on there. Let's not forget that blue blanket. That blue blanket. You think Alex Cox, after everything he did to JJ, possibly with Chad's help, who knows? The bottom line is we know Alex was the instrument of murder, at least I do. And the bottom line is he wouldn't have put that blue blanket there. The mother of that child did, to ease her own dead-ass conscience, because she ain't got one. Joe Jordan says, I was laughing my ass off that the police found Alex's burner phone. Annabelle says, was Alex staged at the church near Chad's on the night of October 18th to make sure Chad followed through? What? It takes Alex Cox for Chad Daybell to grow some hair on his balls? Give me a break. I think Alex went down there. That's what I think. He done everything else according to Chad and Lori's plan. He was their angel of death. Remember that, Lori telling Charles Vallow, I got an angel that will murder you and hide you where no one will find you. Alex was taking on his role. These are my theories. These are my opinions. Everybody has a right to however they see this case, and I respect that. But I'm telling you now, Chad Daybell's a wimp. Chad Daybell couldn't do nothing without the help of other people. It's clear. It's a pattern. Leanne Jordan says, I think someone dropped him off, then parked at the church. Yeah, Barb one, I'm waiting. Now, Lori Daybell, she walked in the courtroom carrying a manila envelope. John Pryor's in the courtroom today dressed in jeans and a polo shirt. He's sitting in front of me on a row reserved for the defense. John Thomas's daughter and a friend are also here observing. Judge Boyce has entered the courtroom and the jury is being brought in. Brent Marshall, I believe it too. I think Alex left his cell phone in the vehicle, or someone even said he might have put it in a bush when he drove down. If he walked, he left it somewhere over there in the church park. In the vehicle. If he drove, he left it somewhere there. And it had no activity. Nobody has explained that. And the defense team obviously isn't going to needle that whole situation at all. Danny B says, I believe it, that Alex was there. Marilyn, people have been talking about Garth and whether Garth was part of the plan or Garth saw something. Again, the testimonies come out that night, and I don't know for how long, Chad and Tammy were alone. I guess it was Garth. Garth lived with them. Garth was at work. Now, we haven't gotten any specificity on what time he got home. Some people really feel strongly that the kids are not just in denial, but that they're helping throughout all this. Y'all know my views. I don't think the children was playing along and going along with the plan to murder their mother. I just don't. That's not realistic to me. I don't believe it happened. I think they're right now just trying to keep their father, the only parent they've got left, from going to death row. That's what I think. And they're in serious denial because their parents had been married for all those years. And yes, some of you have pointed out they were so quick to, be okay with his new hussy wife there. The bottom line is they cannot explain why their father did not tell them that his new wife had children. Emma said it in the 48 Hours interview in the backyard there with the reporter there. She didn't know that Lori had children. They're going to have to damn deal with it. They're going to have to deal with the fact that their father is a damn liar and a serial killer. Good morning, Sherilyn. Terry Ward, that's a great point. Many have said that. According to the friends of Tammy, who went and worked out with her and stuff, she'd have fought for her life. She would have fought for her life. It wouldn't have been a fun thing, i.e., the bruising on the arms. And y'all, I've kind of shifted my view of this. I don't know if any of y'all remember this or ever went through it, but when you were a kid, you remember being held down by the knees on your arms and you got tickled half to death. You literally almost pee yourself. Someone had reminded me of something that I went through when I was a kid. My older brother used to do that. It really, it was awful. It was torture. And I'm thinking that one of the knees, the whole leg was on her arm there, and the knee went up and made that bruise on above her left breast. But this is just a theory. Either that or, you can't say, well, Alex was there restraining her. How would Alex do that? What, has he got both hands on both sides? And that doesn't account for bruising up top and then lower on the forearms. So you have to picture if Alex is there, which I believe he was, maybe he was the one that did the suffocation, and Chad, as big and lumpy and dumpy as he is, was holding her down through that method that I think he had his legs and knees over her arms. That's what I think. Now, John Thomas will be cross-examining Dr. Eric Christensen. He begins by asking about his educational background. That's a great point, Marilyn Landis. Alex was there through all of this. So why wouldn't he be there when Tammy is murdered? It doesn't make sense, does it? That the pattern shows he was always there during these crucial times of the murder of Charles. He was there to try to take Brandon out. He was there. He helped murder the kids. Good morning, Beverly Slade. It just seems that Alex Cox wouldn't have, he wouldn't have just said, well, I'm going to let Chad handle this. Remember, Alex Cox took Lori to the airport to establish her alibi as being in Hawaii. These are just my theories. Many of the Rays came on Saturday. Y'all heard my new theory about GHB. Folks, we're trying to figure this out. Theories and hypotheses, it changes. I never claim to know anything. I'm just trying. I'm no different than anybody else. Everybody's concerned. Everybody's heartbroken. Everybody wants to get justice through understanding, whatever that means to you. Now, John Thomas asked for clarification on what pathology is and what atomic pathology is. And Dr. Eric Christensen says it's learning to diagnose cancer and is focused on the examination of disease and tissue. So that is the difference between pathology and anatomic pathology. Excuse me. Again, y'all, I'm just an old country girl. I might get some of these terms wrong. Please forgive me. I never claimed to be able to pronounce everything. I even sometimes have a hard time pronouncing the YouTube names on here, but you know what? I appreciate you being here, all of you. Again, Rays, if you see any questions in the comments that you know you got the answer to, please help OKJ out. Also, you see any bots, any derogatory comments, ignore it, block it, or report it. Whatever you can do to help out That would be great. CIM says the hair is but one piece of a 100-piece puzzle. And that's true. If you take into totality everything that's been testified thus far, and you add that match of DNA from the hair that is Lori Hussey Daybell's, you add that together, it looks a little more clear now, doesn't it? Is Candace in here? I didn't see her. Good morning, Candace. I'm missing you and Jenny. I hope you had a good birthday yesterday. Good morning, Kale. There she is. Hello, Candace. I love you, honey. Thomas asked if the frothy substance on Tammy Daybell's mouth was ever collected or tested, and Christensen says he's not aware of any testing. Thomas asks if that is normal, and Christensen says testing is not done on it. I don't know what testing you would do, says Christensen, and Thomas pushed back that maybe there was poison or substances in the frothy substance that could be tested. Here we have, y'all, John Thomas trying to poke holes, bringing up everything from fibers up the nose to now he's saying they should have tested this frothy substance, the pink foam. You got to wonder what the jurors are thinking about that, you know? Christensen says there probably wouldn't be enough to test, and there are better samples to use from the autopsy for testing, like tissues or blood. Thomas asked if Tammy's mouth was inspected, and Christensen says he doesn't specifically recall, but imagines he would have because that's what he typically does. Christensen says there was nothing abnormal on Tammy's x-rays. And there wouldn't be anything abnormal on Tammy's x-rays because she was murdered. Nita Smith says that John Thomas is trying out for Quincy 2023. Jennifer Esslinger, you're funny. Yeah, Marilyn Landis. Yeah, the bruising is enough for me. You can't explain that. CIM makes the point. If she suffocated, there wouldn't be nothing on the x-rays. Jenny Benny says the bruising is very telling. Molly's mom, as far as anyone knows, Melanie Pulaski's still married to Ian. I don't think anyone likes the hussy, Kale, but you're saying you don't think her own lawyers like her? I'd say there's many defense attorneys out here that really don't like their client, but they're trying to do their job. You're welcome, Molly's mom. Were they wasp wart? Melanie P. and Ian were in the courthouse yesterday. I never saw that on Nate or Justin. Y'all know how I am. I stick close to them. I have from the beginning. Good morning, Joe Bracken. John Shepard, that would have been something, wouldn't it? If Lori would have said, I want to defend myself, just like Brooks. That would have been interesting. I think it'll be very, very, very interesting if my theory is correct, that Lori will take the stand. I think she's got enough craziness in her that she actually thinks she could probably pull a Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias had all, just like, think about it. Lori's been in jail for 2 years. She's been given access to discovery. She could come up with anything and everything, just as Jodi Arias did. I hope she takes the stand. That would be great. Somebody says she thinks Lori, somebody says, I think she will. Now, John Thomas asked about seizures and if there's any way to check if there were abnormal electric issues in the brain after they died. And Christensen says it's kind of like a car becomes after the car dies. You can't check to see if there was an engine problem because the car is dead. Christensen responds, it's very unlikely that Tammy suffered from a seizure given her medical history and his experience in conducting exams. And if that right there, that testimony, it sinks into a juror, the juror's automatically going to say, why in the hell did that damn asshole say she had seizures before, telling the coroners that? He was setting it up, don't y'all know? That's what he was doing. It was a setup, men. Hey, Roxy. Ann Gibson says Lori wants the final word. Well, I'll tell you what. She's not going to get the final word when she's convicted. Guess what's going to happen? They're going to be victim impact statements. And if anyone thinks Lori's going to speak, she might. I doubt it. After hearing what Kay and Larry and other victims' family members have to say, she's going to stand there. Then she's going to be led away in shackles, and her ass is going to Pocatello prison, in my opinion. Now, John Thomas mentions that Tammy was on fluoxetine, and remember, Rays, we talked about that, a general version of Prozac. Isn't it true that a side effect of fluoxetine is seizures? And Thomas asked this, and Christensen says, perhaps, but he isn't aware of all the side effects. But Christensen stresses he does not believe Tammy had a seizure, although he can't be 100% sure. Well, I guess a follow-up question would be, how long had Tammy been on this generic form of Prozac? And whether anyone besides Chad Daybell saw her seizure. Again, you got the friends saying she's taking all these clogging dance classes. She's doing Zumba. She's doing high-energy aerobics. Nobody has seen a cough, a seizure, nothing. And I'll tell you something, and many Rays have said this. You damn right the woman was on antidepressants. She's married to that damn asshole who was not doing anything to better their life. She was the one bringing home the bacon, don't you know? Right, Betsy's barn. No wonder that Tammy was depressed living with that jerk. You know, it's interesting, is it not, that he wanted to move from Utah to Idaho, and she didn't want to, but she abided by it. She stood by him. Then they get to Idaho, and he tells her he saw some vision that she needed to go visit her family a couple of weeks before she was murdered, and she'd never gone by herself, but she did what her husband wanted her to do, and this damn asshole wants to say he begged and begged and begged for her to go to a doctor. Give me a break. All kinds of evidence that she did what Chad wanted her to do. And yet she's not going to go to a doctor. Christensen mentions that Tammy's brain was thoroughly inspected by a doctor who specializes in brains. The brain was dissected and he looked for medical abnormalities associated with seizures. It's possible he could have missed something? Thomas asks. And Christensen says it's possible. And it's possible she could have died from a seizure, Thomas asks. And Christensen says it's possible. So there you have, right there, poking a hole in his testimony. But he has to say it. I mean, there's a lot of things that are possible. Will the jurors take hold of Christensen saying he doesn't think she's had a seizure? Or are they going to take a hold of John Thomas saying, is it possible she had a seizure? And he says, it's possible. John Thomas asked about the vitamins and natural medications they found in Tammy's house. He asked Christensen if it's possible to overdose on vitamins or natural medications, and Christensen says it's possible to overdose on anything. And I guess it'd be nice to know what her all-natural holistic medicines were, y'all. But again, they did a thorough, they overdid it, really. From yesterday's testimony, he said he'd never been involved in such a thorough autopsy, i.e. also a wide-ranging toxicology screening. Obviously, they're going to see what she was taking in terms of her natural remedies or whatever, and they'll add that to the toxicology screening. There was no testimony that they found elevated amounts of Prozac or natural remedies or anything like that. Thomas asked if Christensen tested for vitamin poisoning, and Christensen says he did not. She did not. That he did not test for vitamin poisoning. Thomas asked if they tested for essential oil poisoning, and Christensen says he's unaware of a test for that. So what's he saying? What's he trying to say here? That Tammy took a bunch of essential oils or natural remedies and killed herself? Oh, and the bruises just so happened to show up on her arms and all that. Give me a break. Thomas asked Christensen why he tested for heavy metals, and Christensen says it's possible to die from heavy metal poisoning. The tests were sent to a lab in Utah, and it was determined that Tammy did not have heavy metals in her system. What John Thomas is doing, y'all, is trying to poke holes in this damning autopsy. Because if they can say they're not sure, if the juror's not convinced that Tammy was murdered, then there is no conspiracy to commit murder on Tammy Daybell in the charge for Lori Hussey Daybell. That's why he's doing what he's doing. And make no mistake, y'all, John Pryor is probably taking notes about how he's going to come at it when Chad Daybell has a trial. Remember, y'all, 2 days from now, just 2, they're going to have a scheduling conference for Chad Daybell. I believe that they're going to give him his court date. Others believe, this could be about anything. And they're right, too. So the bottom line is I believe they're going to give him his court date come Thursday. And I hope he takes that court date and shoves it. Olive Heatley says, poking holes with a big spoon. Even victim blaming, dear Tammy, says Yin Yang, our channel poet. Cynthia Mayer says, Rob Wood better fix this. The state better fix it. They'll come back. They'll come back and say something, hopefully. MK says, justice for Tammy. Jenny Benny, Chad Daybell's court date is for his trial. The cases have been severed, and Chad Daybell still has the death penalty on the table for him. Lori got out of it. And, you know, I guess Mark Means did his job, because Mark Means stuck her ass in a Idaho Department of Health welfare facility for 10 months. She was malingering, y'all, because there's only two things you got to know: the charges against you, and you have to be able to assist in your defense. And Lori has shown throughout her damn life that she is a planner, a master planner. She ain't stupid. Now listen to this, y'all. John Thomas is now talking about Christensen's external review of Tammy's body. Christensen says some bruises showed more hemorrhage than others. Thomas asked if the bruises were consistent with someone falling or being hit with something, or are they more consistent with someone being held down? And Christensen says he cannot determine how the bruises were caused, and someone could fall down and get them. Thomas asked Christensen why he associated these bruises, these injuries, with asphyxia, and the doctor responded it was based on the location of the bruises. Rowan 2U thinks that John Thomas is making the state's case for them. Molly's mom says, is he nuts? John Thomas asked about Tammy's time of death. It's possible Tammy had been lying dead in her bed for a number of hours prior to her discovery. And you know, Christensen says, he says that's certainly possible. And some of y'all said they did it and then they let her lay there. That would explain the pulling in her back. Doesn't mean she wasn't murdered, y'all. Julie Coe, no. They'll have a scheduling conference. I don't know if it's just, if we're going to get audio, whether there'll be cameras or what, whether it'll be a Zoom call. No, Lori's case is moving forward. Of course, we know that this trial has been like, we're going to take a day off, or we're going to finish earlier. We're going to have lots of breaks. We're going to have a extended lunch and all this. That's a great question, though, Julie. I think it's all going to, her trial is going to continue to move forward. Good morning, Lisa Vega. PJ Key says it was earlier that she died because we know Alex was close earlier. So for those that think that Alex and Chad did it, you got to look at the time there. There was an hour plus minutes there where there was no activity on his phone whatsoever. Maybe during that time. Again, I would like to know specifically when Garth went to work and what time he came home. So until I know that, I can't really visualize. Listen to this, y'all. John Thomas asked to admit an exhibit, but then he says he's going to withdraw it. He has no further questions. I guess he just wasn't for sure that he should do this. Because if he does and he puts an exhibit up there, whatever it might have been, it could have been in that envelope, y'all, that Lori brought in. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. But he was going to admit an exhibit, and then he says he's going to withdraw it. He has no further questions. What are you doing, Chi-Chi? For those cat people in here, do you ever have a cat that's kind of just out of the blue starts acting weird and jumping around and running from one room to room? That's what Chi-Chi's doing right now. So if y'all hear that, just know I've got 4 cats. Again, y'all, we're in my home on this little itty bitty channel, trying to get justice through understanding. The Rays have helped me for 2 years. RAY stands for Research, Analysis, and You. So just take it for wherever you want it. It's sure not been defined completely for old KJ, but I do have a course I'm going on. So there are no further questions from the defense from John Thomas. We're waiting now to see if the state recrosses, because I hope they do, because John Thomas has at least been able to get Christensen to say it's possible for several things. Thank you, Liza Joe. Saltina says that maybe Judge Boyce will have an extended break, or maybe he'll do it during lunch on Thursday to get with this scheduling conference for Chin there. That's probably about right, Saltina. Now, Fremont County Prosecuting Attorney Lindsay Blake has further questions. The coroner determined Tammy's cause of death as pulmonary edema, but Christensen says that's not a cause of death. It can be associated with a death, but it is not a cause, says Christensen. So here we go. We got Brenda Dye over there in Idaho, who called it natural causes, said that it was because of pulmonary edema. But now it's been determined that that's just a byproduct of asphyxiation, and that it's not considered a cause of death. It can be associated with a death, but it's not a cause, says this Eric Christensen, which makes all the sense in the world. Hi, Michelle Dawn. Thomas went to the Brooks School of Law, says Tina Reddington. You think? You think? Rowan 2U says it comes after when fluid gets trapped in the lungs. Good morning, Little Bronze. Harley 62 says they better have cameras. Margaret's Neeson Gray says Thomas went to the Del Taco School of Law. Y'all are on a roll this morning. Now, Lindsay Blake asked Christensen to clarify why he ruled out seizures as Tammy's cause of death. And he explains that most people who have seizures have normal brains. A normal brain in and of itself does not exclude seizures, and she certainly had a normal brain. But Christensen says Tammy's age and her lack of history of seizures helped him rule it out. He says people who are 49 don't usually start to have seizures. Rosebud says because this scheduling conference is at 3:45 in the afternoon on Thursday, which I wasn't sure what time it was going to be, the bottom line is this will be after Lori's day of trial there. He'll get with them. So that makes all the sense in the world. Christensen rules out intoxicants as likely cause of death because the exhaustive nature of the testing that was done. Again, y'all, this confirms they did a lot of toxicology testing. He says hundreds and hundreds of medicine and drugs were not found in Tammy's system. Good morning, Norma Guerrera. Illegally Blonde says, I hope Dye isn't the coroner anymore. I think Brenda Dye, along with a lot of people that were associated with this case, also Chandler, law enforcement there. I think a lot of people who were fooled, people that basically didn't do their job as far as I'm concerned. And maybe it's wrong for me to say that because, you know, who would have ever thought this is what these people were doing? But then again, this spills over into all these stupid people that are hearing stuff about, let's do the castings. Let's get the demon out of them. Hey, I just told Lori the day after I heard her say, I'm crushing up pills in Charles's drink. If you do that again, I'm calling the police. Well, I'll tell you what, Lori didn't say that or do that again as far as this person's concerned, but this person obviously saw what was going on down through there and didn't make a damn phone call to the law enforcement, and neither did any of the rest of them. And in fact, the ones that are coming in here, they lied to law enforcement. All of them did. Zulema, Melanie Gibb, I'm sure Melanie P. Hell, she didn't even want to go to the grand jury. They subpoenaed her. You know, she's going to be a whopper on the stand, y'all. I can't wait to hear what that stupid woman, Lori Daybell's niece, Melanie Pulaski, has to say. Lindsay Blake says, why you can't say for sure, did those bruises appear consistent with someone who was restrained? And Christensen says they are consistent with that. So it's up to the jury, y'all. It's up to the jury to decide whether they're listening to this testimony. And unless the state can come in with something else, say a text message like, you know, I know this is going overboard and I know it would never happen, but just an example of we held her down or something like that. If they ain't got nothing to corroborate this Eric Christensen's opinion, his expert opinion on it is consistent with being restrained, then they've got to take what he's got to say and say, do I believe that or not? But if they get corroboration, which, you know, is highly doubtful, but, you know, heck, every day we're learning something new, then that would really seal it. Old Lady Snoop, I really believe that they'll bring the cameras in the courtroom. I really believe it when they, you know, when the jury comes back with a verdict. But if not for that, I know, if she's convicted, there's no reason at all why they can't bring the cameras in there. There's no reason at all. I think that America and the whole world needs to hear these victim impact statements and see that damn hussy go down. Lindsay Blake said, would you expect a dead person to roll out of bed? And Christensen says, not without some sort of force. He says he has seen dead bodies shift positions, but it's usually from decomposition and after the person has been dead for quite some time. And Blake has no further questions. This goes back to some of y'all who's left in the comments that Chad murdered her and then pushed her off the bed as a pretext to hear that thump, to say, Garth, come quick. I can't believe it. I've been telling everybody forever she's going to die, but I'm so shell-shocked. Give me a break. Give me a break. Yes, Tracy Dale, Can Dance, my friend Jenny. Well, it's Can Dance and my friend Jenny are in here, y'all. She's my celebrity. I'm her #1 fan. She's my North Carolina sister that I love dearly. So Blake has no further questions, and we're just waiting to see who's up, y'all, who's slated. Yes, Donna Donald, love me some Can Dance with my friend Jenny. It broke my heart when she stopped putting videos up, but I understand and I totally respect her, however or whatever she decides. To me, Can Dance with my friend Jenny was a true and beautiful voice in the world of social media. And it's a damn shame that they're not still around, but that's just me being selfish. That's how it is. All right, y'all. Dr. Christensen leaves the courtroom. The next witness called by the state is Fremont County Sheriff's Office Detective Bruce Mattingly. He has been on the stand before. So what is he coming back for, y'all? Detective Bruce Mattingly. We know Casantis came back twice. As we've gone along, whenever at the end of testimony, we'll find out whether these people are released from their subpoena or whether they might be called back. So we're just waiting on Fremont County Sheriff's Department Detective Bruce Mattingly. Yes, Zenaida Rivera. Everyone who's ever met Can Dance and my friend Jenny, love them so much. And the Rays went with me to North Carolina, and we spent time with Can Dance and my friend Jenny. Best time. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Okay, now, Lindsay Blake will be questioning Detective Bruce Mattingly, y'all. Yeah, Little Bronze. Can Dance and my friend Jenny, they had really good theories. I learned a lot from them. But then again, I've learned a lot from everyone, all the Rays through this 2 years. All of it sure hasn't come from OKJ. It's come from a joint effort to get justice through understanding. Yeah, Kel, but guess what? Melanie Pulaski does need charges of attempted murder on her strange husband at the time. And they've got storage unit video of Lori, Chad, and Alex doing all that with the Jeep seat and tire. The fact that they've got Chad talking to Alex before and after his attempt on Brandon's life. But does anyone see any charges being filed? There are none. The only charges in Arizona that's been filed is on the murder of Charles Vallow. Thank God for that. He deserves justice, and it's against that damn hussy. Now, Mattingly has worked for the Fremont County Sheriff's Office for 22 years. He's been a detective for 6 years. I've told the Rays early on that I felt like Ian's document and Ian himself was a key to all this. And I still hold true to that. If anyone expects Melanie Pulaski to spill the beans, then they would also have to believe that Melanie Gibbs, Zulema, David Warwick spilled all the beans. No, they're all lying by omission, or they're watering down their testimony. Pure and simple. And I say this about Zulema and them because we've never seen a police interview about this case with Melanie Pulaski. But there were a lot of things that Zulema and Melanie Gibbs said that was never brought out in this trial. Hence, their testimony's been watered down. Now, Mattingly received a call on October 19th of 2019 for a report of an unattended death of Tammy Daybell. Deputy Greenhall went out to the house and called Mattingly. He says she told him she did not find anything suspicious and Mattingly did not respond to the house. Again, y'all, this goes back to not only law enforcement on October 9th when Tammy is shot at. You would think this Deputy Greenhall would say, well, damn, 10 days ago, they called 911 and Tammy was being shot at. Would it matter if it was a paintball gun, y'all? The fact is, if somebody would shoot you or me with a paintball gun, that is a crime. It's called assault. So the bottom line is whether it was a joke, a prank, whatever, this Deputy Greenhall is telling Detective Mattingly she sees nothing suspicious, so Mattingly did not respond to the house. And then this spills over into the coroner, Brenda Dye, and the deputy coroner, forgot her name. But here it is, y'all. Deputy Greenhall told Mattingly she learned about an event on October 9th for a report of a suspicious call of a paintball gun pointed at Tammy. And Mattingly was not involved in the paintball gun investigation. And no additional investigation was done into Tammy's death on October 19th. So now it's being confirmed that this deputy who went to the house for the unattended death of Tammy is telling this detective, Mattingly, yeah, there was a paintball gun incident on October 9th. And Mattingly knows about it from there. And there was no additional investigation being done into the death of Tammy on October 19th. Do these people not know how to put two and two together? Now, Mattingly says on November the 1st, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office began investigating the disappearance of JJ and Tylee. And they began investigating Tammy's death in December. So November 1st, they start looking for the kids, and then they begin an investigation at the end of November, in December, Tammy's death. So we're filling in the blanks on this, on how law enforcement was, in terms of timeline, how this all came together. So as we know, the welfare check was November the 26th of 2019. I'm not sure how many days are left in September, but by November 1st, they're already investigating the disappearance of JJ and Tylee. And we know Tammy was murdered October 19th. So 2 months after her death, in December, they're investigating Tammy's death. We know December 11th, she was exhumed. Mattingly says it became a joint investigation because the FBI, Rexburg Police, Chandler Police, and Gilbert Police were all doing investigations into suspicious activities. So you got all these law enforcement entities that are it's either about Charles Vallow, or it's about the attempt on Brandon's life. Now it's about the disappearance of children. And then they tack on that Tammy's death. You know, these people must have been like, what the hell? Mattingly says they obtained a search warrant for Seasons Medical, Teton Medical, and Walmart Pharmacy. Blake asked to admit Tammy's medical records as evidence, y'all. Tiny, when you say, what's up with law enforcement are working closer into deceased young people? These law enforcement entities, number one, for the longest time, I've seen all kinds of news reports that are unrelated where law enforcement agencies, if only they had been working with other law enforcement agencies, collaborating, then maybe they could have gotten to things sooner. It's my opinion that all of these different entities in law enforcement, they weren't sharing with one another per se, although Gilbert had initially got with Rexburg, Fremont County there. We know they collaborated to what they were trying to do was find that Jeep and all of this other stuff. It all started to come together. We also know at one point, I'm not sure, maybe they'll specify it, all these law enforcement agencies met up in Utah and collaborated finally. So it was the joint effort of, because these law enforcement agencies, they work independently. And the only reason the FBI got in to not only help, but bring their added resources to all of this was because of the children. So until that welfare check, really, the FBI couldn't and wouldn't get involved. And these other law enforcement entities, whether they were from one state or the other, the bottom line is they just didn't come together sooner than they should have. And a lot of mistakes were made in Arizona. So, and obviously you see the mistakes made by governmental officials, i.e. Brenda Dye, the coroner, and the deputy coroner. They should have looked further into this. They should have known something was really, really wrong. But, we can all say, hey, we're hindsight's 20/20, right? At this moment, Blake is asking to admit Tammy's medical records as evidence, y'all. So I'm waiting on that. Saltina says, Tammy will be proven to be healthy prior to her death. No seizures, no heart issues at all. Susan Purdy says, in the beginning, I heard Chad's family distance themselves from him a long time ago because of his fringe beliefs and teachings. And I've heard that as well, Susan Purdy. Yeah, Mrs. D says, I bet they all, law enforcement, feel bad for dropping the ball. I'm sure. And at least, it took them who takes 2 years to investigate Charles Vallow's murder and come out with charges? I don't understand that. They had enough from the get-go as far as I'm concerned. Inconsistent interviews. How long did it take them to decide that Charles had been shot while lying on the floor? How long had time gone by before they did testing that said there was none of Charles Vallow's DNA on the baseball bat, etc., etc.? The medical records will not be shown to the court and jury at this time. The defense asked to review them. Mattingly says he reviewed them, and from an investigative standpoint, nothing stood out to him. Tara Santmeyer says the fact that the shooter is a felon and can't have guns, I think that was, I'm pretty sure, Tara, yes, he spent time in jail for what he did to Joseph Ryan, but I think they made an agreement that it was not going to be a felony because they did check into that. And trust me when I say I believe that, because if they would have known that he wasn't allowed to have a gun, would have arrested him. Pure and simple. That's what they would have done. So I believe the report that situation had remedied itself through what they decided to do. He spent a lot of time in jail. So maybe the agreement was he's going to take a lot of time in jail, but they're not going to make it a felony. It's going to be a lesser charge. But, you know, I'm just telling you, what law enforcement agency that has that information, all they have to do is run his name, showing he's a felon, that he's not allowed to possess guns, they would have arrested him for that. So the other story that we've heard in the reports has to be real, right? Now, Lindsay Blake asked if Mattingly saw anything in Tammy's medical records that showed she had a history of fainting. Mattingly says he did not see anything. She asked if Tammy had any dizziness or dizzy spells, and Mattingly says none. Blake asked if Tammy had a history of seizures or low blood pressure, and Mattingly says there was none, and her medical history was completely opposite of what Chad told investigators. So there you go, y'all. Chad's got his story together. Why wouldn't Chad, does anybody want to answer this for me? Why wouldn't Chad tell the investigators, you know what, I can see beyond the veil, and I saw that my wife had an evil demon in her named Viola. I just thought y'all need to know that because I don't have a problem because it's the truth. You see what I'm saying? Chad Daybell never told anybody that he had said that she was Viola, that Julie Rose knocking on the door. I guess he didn't know that eventually they were going to get text messages between Chad and Lori where Chad is saying, you know, I see the differences and it ain't going to be long once I see those differences. That's right. That's right, Direbite. Chad Daybell's a serial killer. All right, Rays, y'all remember this. Detective noticed a Fitbit on Tammy's nightstand. Mattingly issued a search warrant to Fitbit and received information back from the company. Remember, Rays, y'all talking to me about this? There was no heart rate or sleep patterns recorded on the Fitbit, but Tammy's step count was recorded. Damn. Wouldn't it have been nice, y'all, if her heart rate or sleep patterns would have been recorded? But even then, y'all, it's better than nothing that Fitbit watch did record Tammy's step count. Yes, Michelle Wordle, it was on her nightstand. And that's another, maybe I don't know if this is your point or not, but she wasn't wearing it when she went to bed. She took it off. So that proves, in my opinion, through hypothesis, that she went to bed that night. She took her Fitbit watch off before going to bed. This goes back to, you know, I seen something, I don't know. This is unrelated case where this guy said, my wife, she just disappeared. I don't know where she's at. And then they found her retainer in her mouth somewhere else, showing that she would have never went out with her retainer in. It was only something she'd put in her mouth before she'd go to bed. And then they added other evidence to it and found out that he'd murdered her. The bottom line is what I'm saying is this Fitbit watch would obviously be taken off before you go to bed. So Tammy's steps were recorded, and we'll wait and see what he says. What can you get out of that? You know, that everything looked normal, that she looked like that she was walking normally, that maybe she was healthy in her steps, or perhaps they can say she's recorded so many steps, and according to Fitbit or according to fitness experts or something. Maybe that's what, I don't know if that's what he's going to say. But what I'm saying is everything looked normal. She looked healthy in her steps. Folks, there are days in my life, I will confess it, that I don't walk. I sit my ass down on a couch somewhere. I don't do anything. Those days are not frequent, but they're there. What I'm trying to say is if it's showing a pattern of her steps, getting up every day, going to work, maybe even showing steps. I don't know if she'd wear a Fitbit in her exercise classes or what. Now, Lindsay Blake displays an image on the big courtroom screen showing Tammy's Fitbit activity, y'all. Mattingly says the device Tammy had tracked her heart rate, but not recorded history. It also appears that Tammy very rarely wore her Fitbit to bed, y'all. There you go. The reason we were looking for that is so we could narrow down her time of death, y'all. So the fact remains, because she took her Fitbit off before going to bed, and they can prove that it appeared that Tammy very rarely wore the Fitbit to bed, they can narrow it down. If the Fitbit just stays stationary anytime after that time, you know, or at least can assume, healthy inference-wise, that she's getting into bed, y'all. This is really kind of brilliant, don't y'all think? Right, Mavitt M, Fitbit better than Idaho Coroner. Good point. Shan Banna says, praying for positive thoughts, bring positive results, keep my faith. Good morning, Carol M. Again, y'all, they've established that she would take her Fitbit watch off before going to bed at night. It appeared that way through the pattern that they had. And now, because they can look at that night specifically and see when the activity ceased on her Fitbit, they get an idea, or at least a general idea, of at least before the time the Fitbit stopped doing whatever it does. Before that, she ain't getting murdered. It's any time after that. Lori says, yes, those Fitbits record all your activity so they can see what she has been doing. Yeah, Holly, there are some people that do wear their Fitbits to bed. That's true, but from what they're saying here in the testimony, it just looked like she didn't wear it to bed. Good morning, Corey Joe. Okay, now let's visualize this, y'all. We now see a screen showing the total number of steps Tammy took each month from January 2019 through October of 2019. The total steps for the year, y'all, were 2,787,647. Madeline says, compared to averages, Tammy's steps were a little below average in the first part of the year, but she was above average the rest of the year. Tammy was very active up until the time of her death, says Detective Madeline, looking at the evidence of the steps recorded in Tammy's Fitbit. Illegally blonde, right? She was healthy. There was no slowdown in Tammy's activity in the month leading up to her death, Madeline testified. He says he never found anything to support that she was having health issues, but he did learn Tammy was involved in clogging, Zumba, and was preparing for a 5K that she completed just before school started in 2019. I'm going to tell you what, if this woman was prone to seizures or she was concerned about low blood pressure and fainting, why would she be doing all this? If this was something, and Tammy would know herself, y'all know what I'm talking about. We know our own bodies. We know what's going on with them most of the time. And she had to have known what was going on with her enough to have confidence to go to all these exercise classes. You know, some people have health conditions, and if they tried that, they could be put in the hospital. That's why some people go to low impact exercise classes or do low impact exercising at home or something to that effect, because they know they can't, they're not in a position health wise to do the high impact things. Now, Mattingly says Tammy had 2 life insurance policies. One was from Primerica, and the other was from LifeMap. Mattingly sent search warrants to both companies, and Blake asked to admit documents associated with the life insurance. Right, Miss Vixen, great point. Your doctor wouldn't allow you to do Zumba. And there are things, I mean, what's interesting about it really, as Chad says, Tammy didn't like going to doctors, and yet she had prescriptions from doctors? Give me a break, y'all. Everything Chad Daybell is saying is a crock of shit. Terry Ward says Tammy was very healthy. Are you serious, KCL? Audrey Barterio and Melanie P. and Ian are in the courtroom? Now, let's stop for a minute, KCL. Audrey Bartello, she is not a victim's family member. She's not been ruled a victim. So how can she be in there listening to testimony? Unless you're saying they were in there before testimony started. Melanie Pulowski was not ruled a personal representative of Tylee. Kay Woodcock was ruled personal representative of JJ. Summer Shiflett of Tylee. So how is Melanie P. and Ian in there during testimony if they're going to testify? Please answer that for me. Oh, the courthouse, not the courtroom. Okay, thank you, KCL. Thank you for clarifying that. Well, that's good news. Y'all, that's real good news coming from KCL. This means they're going to, y'all, either today or tomorrow, they're going to be testifying. Molly's mom says Ian will testify. Yeah, the snozberries taste like snozberries. Yeah, we all want to see that damn Lori look alike and act alike. We want to see her on the stand. Anasaur says Melanie P. is wanted on the stand for sure. Karen Holland says Melanie P. You know, I hope so. The snozberries are snozberries. I hope they'll play Ian's phone call, or they'll discuss the recordings that he did for the FBI. Now, Tammy and Chad were listed on the Primerica policy. They were each the beneficiaries on the policy. The amount of Tammy's was $300,000. It was paid to Chad Daybell when Tammy died. On the LifeMap policy, Tammy was insured and Chad was the beneficiary. The amount was for $80,000, and it was paid out to Chad. So that's $380,000. Where are we getting the 430 something thousand that we've been told all this time? Okay, here we go. Here it is, y'all. The Madeline clarifies there was an additional $50,000 on the life map policy, so the total payout was $130,000 on that one. Blake has no further questions. Archibald will now cross-examine. So 300 plus 130 is $430,000 that Chad Daybell received for murdering his wife. And he took Lori over there into Hawaii. They got married. They went to Hobby Lobby before they left, don't you know? They went over there. They hopped island to island. They enjoyed their time in Hawaii. We see pictures of Chad and Lori in a grocery store. Lori lovingly leaning on the shopping cart looking at Chad Daybell. He can take his life insurance money and give it to that prostitute, I'm sure. And basically, y'all, he's out of money now. Because I guarantee you, after all this time, John Pryor, including John Pryor being there today, he's clicking the hours. Every hour he charges, and I hope Chad Daybell enjoys his life in prison, because that's what he got. That's what he got. He got a roll in the hay with a damn whore. He got a roll in the hay with a slimy ass, evil ass woman. Archie asked Madeline if he learned Lori was in Hawaii at the time of Tammy's death, and Madeline says he was aware of that. And Archie asked Madeline if he knew Lori's device was not on Chad Daybell's property on October 9th or 19th, and Madeline says it was not. So what? Lori can take her alibi and shove it. That's what I say. That's right, John Shepherd. Chad, he got to do his little role playing with his concubine queen there for a while anyway. But when he gets sent off to prison, Bubba's going to change the game, don't you know? Bubba's going to be the king. Bubba's going to be the king, and Chad's going to be the queen. Archie asked Madeline if he knew what type of medicine Tammy was on, and he says tramadol, and y'all had schooled me on that. That is a form of pain medication, and an antidepressant, i.e., y'all, a generic form of Prozac. Madeline believes the tramadol was for pain in her wrist. And really, ultimately, Carolyn A., you're right. John Pryor is taking blood money of a murdered Tammy Daybell from Chad Daybell. He's also in control of Chad Daybell's home, the same home that when you walk out the back door into the backyard, you have murdered children that were there. It's disgusting. Jenny Benny says John Pryor's a worm. Well, let me tell you something about John Pryor. I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. If Chad Daybell goes to trial, John Pryor is going to go for the jugular. This man knows. I looked at him at Chad's preliminary hearing. He is going to go for it. He's not a bad defense attorney at all. He's a bulldog, y'all. That's my opinion. John Pryor is definitely twice the man as John Thomas. And also, if you add John Thomas and Archie together, they're nothing compared to John Pryor. Nobody wants to say it, but I will. John Pryor is going to get his defense across. He's going to cross-examine all these witnesses, and he's going to chew them up and spit them out. He's not going to hold back. He's not going to be there to just confirm what the state just got in direct examination like these two attorneys. Archie's doing a little bit of this in terms of being a good, robust defense. John Thomas, I don't know why Archie continues to let him take the lead. Archie asked Mattingly if he reviewed Tammy's school personal file, and Mattingly says he did and there were no issues. She was a good employee. Yeah, that's true, Cynthia Meyer. John Pryor does say that all the time. He says, frankly, Your Honor, it's not fair, Your Honor. And he does it. Some of his vernacular, the things he said is aggravating and everything, but ultimately he gets down to it, y'all. And I'm not saying he's going to get Chad out of this. I just think in terms of what OKJ's been talking about, if the state's going to allow these witnesses, specifically the cult members, to testify and water things down a bit, and the defense, Archie and John Thomas, are not going to try to bring it out, I want answers. And it doesn't matter whether the state gets them or the defense gets them. I know that Lori and Chad are going down regardless. I want answers. And it's a damn shame that we didn't get more answers out of Melanie Gibb or Zulema or David Warwick. Now, Mattingly says the Primerica life insurance policy was established in Springville, Utah before Tammy and Chad moved to Idaho. The Life Map policy was offered through the school district. Tammy worked part-time at the district, and when she went full-time, she was eligible for a maximum amount. After working at the district a year, she was eligible to receive 5 times her annual salary. And y'all, let's put that in perspective. Chad Daybell didn't have a job. Chad Daybell was following his dream. Oh, yeah, I know. He went to these damn conferences and set up a little table with his books, and he sold them there. And, you know, we know he's put them on Amazon. There were people snatching them up. Folks, that publishing company wasn't doing well. They were having serious financial problems. Tammy was working full-time, and her husband was following his dream, and it led him straight to a jail cell, being labeled a serial killer, which he is, and ultimately Chad's dream. And Tammy Daybell working full-time to keep the house up and everything else. Chad's dream, y'all, is going to end with him and Bubba, okay? Him and Bubba are finally going to be together in prison. And they're going to learn a lot about each other. They're going to learn all kinds of things. Vanessa Kittler says, shame on Chad. His books were a hobby, not a proper job. He's pathetic. Amy says, inside and out. Bubba and Chad are going to know everything about each other. Don't y'all know? Don't you know? They did, a Mohawk mom. The reason I guess it's been maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, we went directly into the finances of Chad and Tammy Daybell's. And the bottom line is Tammy Daybell brought home the bacon. Tammy Daybell's salary, as testified here, confirming what we already knew. Tammy was the breadwinner. Chad Daybell was the jerk. Not only did he live off his wife when he could have got a job, but now he's going to murder her to trade her in for a younger hussy. Now, Archie asks Mattingly if the life insurance companies wanted their money back from Chad Daybell because of fraud, and Mattingly says it was discussed, but he's not sure if anything came of it. Archie has no further questions. Blake asks for a sidebar with Boyce and the other attorneys. White noise is played in the courtroom, and folks, it is 9:55 a.m. in Boise, Idaho. So if they better not tell us we're taking an early lunch, because what I think's going to happen, y'all, maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong many times, y'all, but what if we got Ian and Melanie P., Audrey Bartero? We've got, y'all, I'm serious. I think this is going to happen. Leanne Jordan says Chad and Lori catfished each other. Miss Vixen tells Gene P., especially renting, it's not like the house is the only place they can afford to live. Eileen says, KJ, will you cover Chad's trial? I've seen that several times. Y'all, it depends on the trial date. It depends on that. I told the Rays that we were going to adjudicate this case, but as I've thought about it, I'm thinking the same witnesses, a lot of the same testimony and all that. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. I guess what I will say that it depends on the trial date. No, Amy. Lori never did move into the Daybell home. In fact, why wouldn't she? Coming back from her honeymoon in Hawaii? Why is she still over at the apartment and Chad's over at his house? And she's telling the police that he's a friend of Alex's, and Chad says he don't have his wife's number. Obviously, he didn't say my wife, but when he was asked by Hermosillo for Lori's number, he said he didn't have it. But then he goes on to give it to him, which is interesting to me that no one says why, what was said to make him change his mind and give the number. Other than he did say, well, the reason I said that is because I felt like y'all were accusing me of something. Gene P., it just was confirmed that the first one, was it Primerica, it was a $300,000 one that if something happened to Chad, Tammy would get it. And if something happened to Tammy, Chad would get it. And the life map was only on Tammy. So yes, Chad Daybell did have life insurance jointly with his wife on the first policy. The second policy was given through Tammy Daybell's employment. When she went full-time, she was able to increase that amount. And of course, y'all know, Chad Daybell and Tammy Daybell, according to the murder indictment, they were there Sunday, September the 8th, at home on a Sunday, increasing the life map, while Lori and Alex was at Yellowstone with the kids for the very last time. And then what is it? That was September 8th, and then about a month later, on October 9th, they're trying to implement that because that stuff with Brandon didn't go through on October 2nd. I see it clearly, and I know many of the Rays do as well. We're still in a sidebar, y'all. Yes, THX, if you're asking if that's been made clear, they had one policy that had Chad and Tammy's name on it for $300,000. So if one died, the other got it. The life map was only for Tammy. They just said that in the testimony. Obviously, y'all know this is blow by blow with Nate Eaton. The best thing I can tell you advice-wise is to listen to the audio later on this evening when it comes out. Maybe Jenny Benny, maybe they're discussing that they're wanting to bring in Melanie Pulaski right now. Oh, Vintage Mama of 3 says, KJ, there's a video of Ian and Melanie P entering the courthouse. Okay, thank you, Vintage. Thank you. I know KCL was letting me know earlier. Y'all, this is getting exciting. This is getting exciting. How many times have we said we want to hear from Melanie Pulaski? We want to hear from her. We know she was not at all happy when they shot the police body cam came out with her being served to go to the grand jury in Idaho when she was at home with Ian. She didn't want to have any part of that. Also, the only other thing we knew of Melanie Pulaski, y'all, was when she went in to the law enforcement there in Arizona, that I think it was the day after Brandon was shot at. She brings her child. Many believe she brought that child in there as cover to be distracting and all of that. I mean, really, y'all, if this woman was going to meet with police, right, why not get someone to watch that child? Why not do that? This is adult conversations being taken on. She used that child as a shield. And then we have what? After Lori and Chad flew the coop, who was Melanie P with all the time? Alex Cox. She's trying to get her kids back. She gets arrested. Y'all remember that? I want a victim's advocate. You remember that, y'all? Y'all remember that? Well, let's just see what Melanie P has to say. Okay, so the sidebar is over, and Blake is now asking Detective Manley some follow-up questions. Are you aware whether or not Mr. Daybell does have charges pending for insurance fraud? And Manley says he can't recall. Now, that don't make sense, y'all. That don't make sense. Why wouldn't Detective Manley know that the murder indictment in this case, well, it's not this case, it's Chad Daybell. So this is specifically about Lori. So I guess the sidebar is whether or not it would be okay for them to bring this up. And Madeline says he can't recall. So why would he say that? You know, Detective Madeline has to know. Yeah, I remember that, Little Bronze. When the cop in that body cam on Melanie Pulaski, he says, stop talking, just stop talking. I mean, he got tired of it real quick. Did you learn, y'all, whether or not the defendant was living off the proceeds of those insurance funds while living in Hawaii with Lori Vallow? And Madeline says he did learn. And Blake has no further questions, and Madeline is released from the stand. So here it is, y'all. It's been dropped into the lap of these jurors. Something that's not been brought up, really. The life insurance fraud. And how does this relate to Lori Hussey Daybell? Well, didn't the jurors earlier on hear about that Lori wasn't going to get the $4,000 a month? And how all and what the whole testimony of Lori not getting insurance money. We've heard that already. Now they dropped it into the jurors' lap. Common sense, that gut feeling, y'all. These jurors are hearing it now. They've just been told. Did you learn whether or not the defendant was living off the proceeds of those life insurance funds while living in Hawaii with Lori Vallow? Well, folks, she could have worded it like this. Her and Chad got married. She was his wife. Was Lori living off of that? Was Chad not giving some of his whore some of this money? But I understand they're trying to bring in Chad Daybell's insurance fraud because they've already established Lori was trying to do this shit. So Mattingly is released from the stand, and one can only wonder, Rays, who is next? Who is next? Lindsay Blake calls Alice Gilbert to the stand. Gilbert says she moved into the Daybell's neighborhood, an LDS ward in 2017, y'all. She's a neighbor of Chad Daybell. Here we go. Gilbert worked with Tammy at church too, y'all. So not only is she living in Chad Daybell's neighborhood, but she worked with Tammy at the church. Gilbert was the Relief Society president. This Alice Gilbert was the Relief Society president, and Tammy was the first counselor. She says they met once a week for meetings, and then on Sundays. They began serving together in October of 2018 and were in the same presidency until Tammy died. Now, this is a person who's been around Tammy for a lot and has also moved into the Daybell neighborhood, y'all, and has been in that neighborhood since 2017. Olive Heatley says, oh my goodness, yay. No, noisy neighbor, says John Shepherd. Finally here, back to country, says. Let's go, says Julie Thompson. Let's hear it, says Wendy Lamb. Neighbors know what's going on, says Lori. Y'all got it going on. Heidi's Mind says, this was a good interview I remember from a while back. I don't remember it, y'all. Maybe it will refresh in my memory. Y'all know I'm just an old woman. Let's see this. Alice Gilbert says Tammy was shy, very organized, and knew computers very well. Whenever they planned an activity, Tammy said, let's keep it simple. And it seemed to work. And that's how she lived. Simple, says this Alice Gilbert. It's so sad, y'all. It's so sad that Tammy wanted to she just wanted a simple life. She just wanted to please her husband, raise her children, be there for her grandchildren. She wanted to be there for all the kids that would come into the library. She cared about everyone, but she was so simplistic. And, you know, y'all, I mean, we know a lot of, I feel like I like to live simply too. I know a lot of y'all probably are like that too. But you know what? Chad Daybell didn't want it simple, did he? He wanted to be on stage in front of everybody. He wanted the hooker. He wanted the trophy wife. Don't y'all agree? He didn't want a simple life with Tammy Daybell anymore. He wanted to do what he wanted to do, and now all he has left is a future rendezvous with Bubba in life in prison. Now, this Alice Gilbert says Tammy and Chad's relationship was normal at first. Uh-oh, y'all. He would set up chairs for activities and support her. In 2019, y'all, he became more distant. Tammy never mentioned her relationship to Gilbert, but did once mention that finances were becoming strained. Gilbert never noticed Tammy slow down before her death. Gilbert says, in fact, I think it increased. Gilbert never saw Tammy faint or having shaky fits. Well, we know that it has been established through testimony, y'all, that Lori was paying for those airplane tickets for Chad to come down there so they could screw. Alex also gave Chad money through airlines. I guess Chad had to spend whatever money he had on his hooker. And so, you know, him going to these conferences, I don't give a damn how many books he was selling. That probably just paid for his, you know, his eating, the way he looked. And not only that, I mean, well, Lori was paying for hotel rooms too. She had to have a place to go to do the evil damn bumping and grinding stuff. At 7 a.m. on October 19th, Emma called Gilbert sobbing and said her mama died. Chad took the phone from Emma and told Gilbert not to tell anyone and wait for about an hour. Gilbert told Chad she needed to call the bishop. Chad told her not to call the bishop, but she still did. Now, somebody explain to me why Chad Daybell does not want the bishop to know, and he doesn't want this Gilbert woman to tell anyone that Tammy is dead. Somebody tell me. Give me something good here. Tell me why Chad didn't want this woman to call the bishop. Give me a good one now. Right, CSI. Don't call the bishop. Question mark. Somebody tell me. I don't know how this organized religion does things. So somebody please tell me. Time to get his story straight, says Chico's mommy. Okay, so anyway, this Gilbert woman went over to the house around 8:30 a.m. and Chad met them at the door. Chad gave her a hug and all the kids were there with their spouses except for Mark. The children were stunned. They were all on the couch and chairs and they could hardly speak. I think something would have immediately... Okay, BH says the bishop would have immediately come over. Now, why would Chad have a problem with that if he thinks he's got his story together? Why would that happen? So I'm assuming Gilbert and the bishop, but it just says they came over there. They were stunned. And Chad was not stunned, says this Gilbert woman. Gilbert had seen Tammy the previous Wednesday, and she seemed fine. Tammy did not complain of any health issues, and she never had a coughing fit. Gilbert asked the kids if they had breakfast, and they had not. Gilbert says she and her husband, okay, so now she's saying it was her and her husband, would go get them breakfast. As she got up to leave, Chad told her the funeral was going to be on Tuesday and a memorial on Wednesday. Gilbert said this seemed very quick, and she asked if Chad planned this, meaning if Tammy and Chad had previously planned their funerals, etc. It's a good question to ask, isn't it? And he says, Chad responded no, and Gilbert says it caught her off guard. Gilbert went to Tammy's funeral in Springville. I had to tell her goodbye, she said, and she starts to cry, y'all, on the stand. She grabs a tissue and apologized for crying. And this Alice Gilbert said of Tammy, she looked good. I had to see her. Oh, y'all, this breaks my heart. This breaks my heart. This is so sad, y'all. Yes, Cook Goose in Florida. When we listened to Tammy Daybell's 911 call, she sounded so sweet. She had, a sweet, calm little voice. Bless her heart, says M.M. Nita Flynn says the bishop might have enlightened the kids on legal matters. Not sure what that means. So sad, y'all. Yeah, Rainy April. She did. Tammy Daybell's voice sounded like a young girl. Now, this Alice Gilbert says the funeral was nice and the kids all spoke. They did a good job, she recalls. They did really nice talks and tributes to her. And Chad spoke last. He gave a good talk too. Maybe more like a church talk than a spouse would speak about their spouse. He is so decrepit. He knew he had murdered her, and he thought he was getting away with it. I'm sure when they paid out on the insurance, he thought he was in the free and clear. Lori said, I heard his talk was weird. Rowan to you says, and not a tear shed, I imagine. BH said the bishop would have wanted to help in the funeral arrangements. Yeah, Terry Ward, I believe so. Chad Daybell is done for. And I think John Pryor's probably sitting in there right now sizing this up. Miss D said Chad had a very creepy laugh during his talk at the funeral. Yes, Carla Cassidy, I'm so thankful that they were caught and that they are standing trial. It's just Robbie says that perhaps the bishop would have gotten in the way of Chad doing what he was going to do. Four Smurfs 1 says Tammy was so loved. The bishop would not have supported no autopsy. That's a good point. You know, you would wonder if these kids, you know, they're adults now, Chad's kids. I think Emma's already had a child. Maybe they would want to know Tammy Daybell's cause of death to add to their health history there. Now, Gilbert did not go to the memorial service the next day because they were at the funeral. The Relief Society presidencies and Bishop took a meal that night to Chad's house. Chad was there and said he was moving out because he couldn't be there. Well, of course he's moving out. He's moving out and into between those spread eagle legs of that damn hussy. That's where he's going. He wants to dive into that. He better not get him a good supply of 2x4s so he can strap them on so he doesn't fall in. Chad said he was moving to Rexburg to a friend who had a condo. He said his friend was hardly ever there and was letting Chad stay there. He called his friend a he. Gilbert thought it was a male friend. Gilbert says the kids were eating and didn't question their father about him moving. On the following Friday, Gilbert stopped in to see Emma and Garth. Emma was crying. She missed her mom, and she said Chad didn't want anything to do with her or her siblings. Well, there you go, y'all. Everyone said, well, Chad didn't kill his kids. Well, guess what he does? He doesn't want anything to do with them, according to Emma. You know, he's not going to kill them. Thank goodness for that. But he's not going to have anything to do with them. Guess what? Because Lori don't want to be no stepmom. Lori murdered her kids so that Chad wouldn't be a stepfather. So Lori wants her way? I mean, yeah, we know. Lori made chocolate chip cookies for the kids and all that shit. The bottom line is Chad Daybell is a son of a bitch. Alice Gilbert then went to Garth's house. He said he was hoping he wouldn't lose his dad. Gilbert says Emma got very sick and lost a lot of weight. The ward and school district went bringing in meals to the children who were living at Chad and Tammy's house. Well, don't y'all know? Lori had to get back from Hawaii from her alibi. She's got to make sure Chad and her do the dirty. Keep each other on the hook through their horny crap. Y'all know what I'm talking about. They had no compassion, no love, nothing to do what they did. Chad had no love for Tammy to do that. If he could spare his own children from being murdered, then why not spare his wife? You know why? Because he wanted the damn money so he could spend it on that damn hooker. Okay? It would make Lori more horny. It would make her more susceptible to doing all this stupid role-playing crap. You think someone lumpy-dumpy like Chad Daybell's gonna get this former beauty queen and freaking Wheel of Fortune woman wearing these damn yoga pants and leggings? Had four husbands before having him as the fifth? Gosh, he should have damn took some of that insurance money and took Lori somewhere to get vaginal reconstruction, y'all. After about a week, Gilbert called Chad and asked if she could come and visit Chad with her husband. Chad said no, but said he would come and see her. We're now going on a morning break until 10:45. So it is 10:21. So we're going into a break for about 20 minutes. And I'm going to tell y'all, this is something we've never heard before. Not only did Chad have to dang shed, S-H-E-D, his former life with his wife. Now he's being distant with his kids. He's moved out of the house. He's not there for the kids. They're going through a lot of emotional crap. And folks, really, I mean, let's just get for real. I understand people's theories and hypotheses change from time to time. But this whole thing that Garth and Emma and all them knew that Chad was going to kill their mother, that to me, according to this testimony, Emma's getting very sick and losing weight. She's crying. She misses her mom. She says her dad didn't want anything to do with her and her siblings. So he's trying to get away from his old life and have that money from Tammy there. And folks, make no mistake. We heard the testimony that Chad Daybell gave what? Emma and Garth, I think it was $8,000 when he got arrested and stuff. Do you think he gave them a penny at first of these children's mother's money? Then you think about this Alice Gilbert and the bishop and all that. Chad is, he's got to get away from the, what is normally done in that organized religion now that he believes what he believes. You think he's going to want Lori or Alex or Zulema or Melanie Gibb or David Warwick to know this bishop's coming to his house? And he's the one saying, we're not part of that anymore. We're part of the Church of the Firstborn. This is separate from the regular church here. We're the leaders now. You think he's going to want a bishop counseling him? Oh, hell no. As far as Chad Daybell's concerned, he's the new prophet. He's the one that sees beyond the veil. He's the one writing books about, we found more gold plates down in Guatemala. Give me a break. Right, pussycat. He thinks he is the bishop. He thinks he's above everyone else. And if he doesn't think that, he's got to pretend that because he's already done all this role-playing bullshit with his inner circle there. And besides that, why would he want to go and get visits from this Alice Gilbert or this bishop? He's too busy trying to stick his little itty-bitty gherkin in that woman and to Lori. He's got to spend time with his new queen now. He's got to subtly, in some way, get away from everything that was part and parcel of being a man who'd been married all them years and had these children and everything else. Yeah, I believe Lori was a flapping portal, if you know what I mean. That thing was loose. That thing probably flapped around, y'all. No more doing the splits for Lori. No, she don't want to stick to the floor. Yeah, well, you know what? Role-playing is one thing, murder is another. The bottom line is these people used, what have I said many times? They endorsed and espoused religious beliefs for the purpose of murder. Endorsing and espousing is part of the game there, don't you know? This goes back to Zulima's the fire woman, the earthquake woman, and Melanie Gibb is Phoebe, Lori's daughter from a different life, and they all give each other new stuff. And let's not forget what Ian said when he met Melanie Pulaski, which by this afternoon we might hear from them. He said this was like a role-playing Dungeons and Dragons game. In fact, I want to lay this in your lap because we know Ricky Wright of the FBI testified yesterday. I want to say this before we go back off break. I think it will enlighten you. And many people that have been following this case knows what this is, but others, listen up. Ian created a document, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm only going to read about Ricky Wright, y'all, the one who testified yesterday, because I think this is relevant. I think this will absolutely shed a light on Ricky Wright's testimony yesterday as it relates to Melanie Pulaski and Ian Pulaski, and it will absolutely make sense if Ian and Melanie do decide to testify this afternoon. So Ian Pulaski did make this document. He says it was to let Melanie Pulaski's lawyers know everything. I disagree, but this is his own words. He says, when meeting with the police, I intended to share things as I understood. Detective Hope and Hermosillo were present, along with an FBI agent named Ricky. I've since shared all of my concerns with Melanie, and I've gotten clarification on some of them. What I shared with the police were the ideas that Chad, Lori, and Alex may have planned a shooting at Brandon, and that Tylee and JJ may be in serious danger if Melanie's fears have any validity. If shooting at Brandon was part of the Lord's plan, then the kids' lives could be forfeit based on the idea that they're not really Tylee and JJ anymore. I shared that Melanie had concerns about them participating in the shooting and was against anyone trying to hurt him. She couldn't see them doing these things, but she also knew they would follow the Lord's will as they saw it. I shared ideas about earthquakes being prepared in Salt Lake City, and that it was believed that there would be a time when the quakes would hit and that many possessions would occur there due to the high number of injuries there would be. Such a thing would be a huge threat to God's plan and would need to be dealt with directly. Alex and Zulema had stayed in Las Vegas and were preparing earthquakes at the time I spoke to police. I shared concerns for the safety of my kids and Natalie, and Ian's talking about his ex-wife Natalie. I offered to help in any way I can. I then allowed them to pull data from my phone. I met with them again the following afternoon and restated what I knew for a few other detectives. Lieutenant Ball, and another FBI agent named Travis. They shared some mild concern about me potentially spying for Chad and Lori. In other words, they thought, is Ian in here? Is he really spying for Chad and Lori? I explained that I was there because I was very concerned primarily for the safety of my kids and that I wanted to get Melanie out of this if possible. They gave me a recording device that looked like a thumb drive on a keychain. My plan was to record anything I thought could help locate Tylee and JJ, or locate Chad and Lori, and understand what happened when Brandon was shot at. If I thought Chad and Lori were going to be calling, I'd turn on the recorder and just let it run until they hung up. I don't feel that anything substantial was recorded, as Chad and Lori never talked about the kids or their location. Most of the conversations consisted of everyone commiserating about the current circumstances, discussing religious ideas, and just catching up. And when you're talking about commiserating about the current circumstances, this is about when Chad and Lori took off after the welfare check. They're all commiserating. They know shit's getting real. The hammer's coming down, y'all. In addition to the recordings, I would talk with Ricky, which is Ricky Wright, y'all, and he'd show me, he'd let me know about things that may come up in the conversations. He was never specific, but would give me just enough information for me to know when it came up. These tips, y'all, that Ricky Wright gave Ian Pulaski did what? What did it do? These tips turned into Tammy's body being exhumed and Alex's passing. Let me repeat that. The tips that Ricky Wright gave Ian when he would go to record, this is an FBI agent, y'all. The tips that he gave Ian obviously says that he used the tips that Ricky told him, and these tips turned into Tammy's body being exhumed and Alex's passing. It is what it is. And I guess we're going to find out here shortly, hopefully, either this afternoon or tomorrow. December the 19th, y'all. That was 7 days after Alex is dead. And that's 8 days after Tammy's body is exhumed. Detective Hermosillo contacted me, Ian Pulaski, and told me they had another warrant for Alex's apartment next door. He asked if I'd give them the code to the garage so they would have to break the door in. They wouldn't have to break the door in. I shared the code. I didn't see any reason not to. They went in with a forensic team, y'all, and looked for any evidence of JJ having been there. Melanie Pulaski saw them there and spent the afternoon at my apartment. That night, I went to the apartment and looked around to see what they'd been doing or if they'd taken anything. I also wanted to see the warrants to understand what they'd been looking for. After looking around, I went to see Melanie Pulaski at my apartment. I finally, says Ian, I finally broke down and told her that I'd spoken with the police and that I don't believe any of this. He's telling her, Melanie Pulaski, I don't believe in anything that you've been doing with Chad and Lori and all them. Think about her testimony coming up, y'all. Think about his testimony. Ian says, I didn't know how she would react, but I couldn't hang on to the stress anymore. Of course, she was hurt. She was feeling betrayed, but she reassured me that she loves me and that she understands why I did it. i.e., Ian was recording things for the FBI and the other law enforcement agencies in an attempt to find out where the children were. But in the process, according to Ian, y'all, there are things that have been said. They commiserated over the current circumstances. They meaning the inner circle, y'all. At that time, I didn't share that I'd been recording anything with her. When he told her that he had spoke to police, he didn't tell her at that moment, what we're talking about right here, that he had been recording all that time. I wasn't sure if we'd hear from Chad and Lori again, says Ian. So I didn't tell Melanie Pulaski, hey, I'm recording you. Because guess what, y'all? He wouldn't tell her that because he knew she was knee-deep in shit with Chad and Lori and the rest of the inner circle. Because if he thought Melanie Pulaski was just blindsided and she wasn't in any of this, he wouldn't have had a problem telling her, hey, I'm recording for the FBI and the police. And also, he knew that if he told her this, he says it, I wasn't sure if we'd hear from Chad and Lori again. I.e., if he'd have told Melanie Pulaski, she'd have told Lori, her Aunt Lori, her hussy Aunt Lori, and then Ian would not get a chance to see if they would talk about the kids again. Makes all the sense in the world. We're still in a break. So over the following week, we had discussions on our situations, and I came to understand things a little better. He's talking about him and Melanie Pulaski. Ian and Melanie there, Pulaski, are talking about their situations. And Melanie P. was legitimately afraid of the ideas I'd shared with the police and the FBI. Of course she was legitimately scared about it, because she knew that she was in all this. I am not saying that she was there when the children were murdered. I'm not saying she knew that Chad and Alex were going to murder Tammy. I do know that she knew that the children were dead. Anyone can understand that. But they weren't anything she had any proof of in terms of being afraid of what Ian had shared with the police and the FBI. As I've spoken with her and dug into the details, I've come to believe that she truly doesn't know anything about who shot at Brandon or where the kids have gone. No, he didn't dig into things. He wanted to get his new wife, Melanie Pulaski, out of all this. So when he says he dug into the things, he probably figured out a way with her to get her out of all this. Melanie Pulaski only has what if, says Ian. What if scenarios that she shared. I'm worried that I jumped the gun and have sent the authorities on yet another wild goose chase, along with prompting them to light up the national media with pieces of what I shared. My intent was to protect my family and help solve the case of the kids' disappearance, not smear anyone in the public eye. I certainly didn't want to give Brandon any ammo to hurt Melanie any more than he already has. I still have my doubts. Primarily, why not turn to the police first instead of disappearing if you claim your life is in danger? And he's talking about Lori and Chad disappearing. Why leave your innocent niece here to clean up the mess and encourage her not to cooperate with the authorities? So Lori and Chad is telling Melanie Pulaski, don't cooperate with anyone. And in fact, the reason I researched it, Melanie Pulaski missed several custody battle hearings, at least one anyway. She said God told her not to go. And yet she wants to come out on national TV after Lori and Chad disappeared and before the children were found and say that Brandon did all this. Brandon made it look like she was in all this. Why encourage her not to fight for her kids? Ian says about Lori and Chad telling Melanie Pulaski, don't go to the courthouse where Brandon's got a court date for this child custody stuff. Don't do it. You know why? You know why? Because they didn't want to stink at that time. If Melanie Pulaski went to the court hearing, that would turn and shift and make everyone look at Chad and Lori their way. Her ex-husband now has temporary sole custody as a result. Why not simply provide proof that the kids are okay and put an end to this insanity, says Ian. Isn't it odd that the two detectives assigned to your case happen to be two of the Dark 50? So he's saying, isn't it interesting that the two detectives that are assigned to Lori and Chad and the missing kids are considered Dark Canes? Well, how would Ian know this? Unless Melanie Pulaski told him this. Everyone's trying to do their job and save these kids are either evil or deceived. Ian's trying to prove a point. Everyone that's trying to find the kids are either evil or deceived, according to who? Chad and Lori, who also have told Melanie Pulaski not to help law enforcement in any way. Melanie Pulaski's telling Ian this shit, y'all. Your kids are missing and it doesn't come up once during a handful of lengthy conversations. Ian's talking about these recordings he did for the FBI and the police. And he's talking about Lori. They don't even bring it up. Why would they? Why would they bring it up? There's so much more that I have. I don't even want to have anything to do with these two after this. Talking about Chad and Lori. Ian saying, I don't want nothing else to do with it. Melanie has been put through the ringer because of their paranoia and now is in the hot seat because I went to police and tried to help. I know she's done nothing wrong and I want her free from all of this, says Ian. I will no longer openly cooperate with the police or the FBI, says Ian. But I will through my attorney. And y'all do recall, when Ian and Melanie Pulaski came out the beginning of 2020 before the children were found, they had their attorneys right there with them. They did their East Idaho News extravaganza like Melanie Gibb did and everything else. My final straw was when I received a call on Friday from Ricky, y'all, with the FBI, Ricky Wright, who just testified yesterday, where he threatened charges of lying to federal officers and are being an accessory in the disappearance of Tylee and JJ because Melanie clearly couldn't answer questions about the religious aspects of the investigation. So he's confirming Melanie Pulaski was not going to cooperate, y'all, with anything that these law enforcement agencies were asking her. They were asking her not only about the kids, but they were asking her about the religious aspect. She wouldn't even answer that. After I shared my doubts with her, her world shattered. She couldn't answer those questions because she doesn't know what she believes about these things anymore. And why would she say that? Why would she tell Ian or anybody else? I just don't know. I don't know what I believe anymore. You know why? Because her ass is nailed to the wall. Just as Melanie Gibb and all them, they're distancing themselves. They were all there in it. Melanie Pulaski was at castings with Malachite, y'all. She was there the entire time. There was so much information dumped on her by Chad and Lori that she can't remember what she learned from them. Give me a break. Just give me a break. She cannot remember what all Chad and Lori had been teaching her. And yet earlier in his document, he's laying out everything. Ian is saying Melanie Pulaski can't remember what she learned from Chad and Lori, and also from the podcast she listened to, or from her on her own. So that tells you something too. It's a pattern here. All these people, it's all been in the testimony, in Chad's preliminary, other things that we've gotten that are factual. That every time Lori got into a vehicle, she wasn't listening to music. She's listening to podcasts over and over again. Rick Ross of the Cult Institute says it's thought reform, it's brainwashing. And now Ian is saying Melanie Pulaski on her own was listening to all this stupid ass shit from Shroud, from Julie Rowe, from all these people, these conferences and stuff. A 20-year veteran FBI agent is throwing a hissy fit after one shaky interview tells me all I need to know about how they want to handle this. She didn't trust authorities before because of how poorly the Air Force treated her when she went to pick up her kids with a court order in hand. And that's the end of that, y'all. He's given his reasons why Melanie Pulaski and himself, they're only going to help in any of this through their attorneys. They're not going to cooperate anymore. And Ian wants to say one shaky interview. I'll tell you what, they were asking Melanie Pulaski some shit she knew. And it puckered her ass and she didn't want to answer it. You know why she didn't want to answer it? Because she was in the inner circle. And I believe Ian was on his way to doing that as well. As many of you recall, Rays, we talked about it. Ian had met Chad and Lori before they took off to Hawaii. They gave the care of Melanie Pulaski. They gave the care. Chad and Lori said, here, Ian, Melanie Pulaski is in your hands now. It is what it is. You know, Ian's also talking about how Melanie Pulaski said that Lori and Chad could teleport to Hawaii. Well, I think their airline tickets says otherwise. Ricky says Pulaski is Lori Jr. We are still, it's 27 minutes into a morning break. It is 10:47 a.m. in Ada County. Yes, M.M. Earlier in Ian's document. So, any of y'all that are interested that don't know about it, you type into the search engine, Ian Pulaski, and then put document, and it will amaze you. It will amaze you. How is it that Ian Pulaski, before the children are found, has this document, and he's able to tell earlier in the document everything that happened? Everything that happened to Brandon Boudreaux, the things that he knew before the kids were reported missing and everything, that the kids were going to be taken out by Alex because Alex had tried to take Brandon out. And then he's talking about all this other stuff that actually comes true. He can't back out of it. He is the key. I am very, very excited to think that Ian Pulaski is going to testify. I don't know if they're going to bring out what was in this document of his that he turned over to Melanie Pulaski's attorneys. Adam V says, oh, I thought the break was over. Well, I'm looking right here at Nate Eaton. Maybe the break is over, but there is no refresh on it. They're 29 minutes into it when he says we are now going on a morning break until 10:45. So they're, 4 minutes over the break time? Did y'all expect anything less? Every time they say they're taking 20 minutes, it's 25, 30. Okay, now we're back from the break and jurors are being brought in. Okay. So, Adam B., perhaps you were correct. Yes, Gene P., you're correct. It was Ian's ex-wife, Natalie, who's, from what I understand, Krisha K. Easton of Difficult Research has met her before, says she's a wonderful person. I believe Krisha is a good judge of character in a lot of areas. And she found that on, I believe it was like an iPad device. And when that came out into everything, y'all remember, Ray's? I just opened the channel. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what we were hearing. It was one thing when we first started really digging into this case that you had Melanie Gibb saying, well, these people were murdered and everything before even the announcement that the kids have been found and everything. And we're like, what? What? And then we get this document from Ian Pulaski. It was like, damn. Some people trust Ian, some people don't. We're on a new thread, y'all, and they are back, but nothing new has been said. Yes, Miss Vixen, you're right. Natalie insisted that Ian go with her to the FBI. And guess what, y'all? Ian started working with the FBI and law enforcement before even Melanie Gibb did. Melanie Gibb had to get her shit down. She had to get her story straight with David Warwick, don't you know? Michelle says that both are there with their lawyers, Ian and Melanie Pulaski. I think Ian was cultivated by Melanie. Well, when you got Ian in his document talking about she'd had a dream, Melanie Pulaski, basically it looked like she was going to offer her own kids. Yeah, Jill Schneider says, I'm mixed on Ian. I am too. Mariah Sestola says, I just really don't understand Ian. Well, I'll tell you, if nothing sinks in about Ian Pulaski, he's had a baby with Melanie Pulaski. He does say in his document he wants to get her out of this. Maybe he thought she is in deep. And they really, really misled her in all of this. She was vulnerable. But then again, he wants to talk about Lori and Chad taking advantage of her vulnerabilities. Why is he marrying her within, 10 days? He knew she was vulnerable too. Jay says, thank you, Natalie Pulaski. You know what, Gene P? I think so. I think that Garrett Smith is Zulima's attorney and Melanie Pulaski's attorney, I think. You know, everyone who knows who that is. He's the one that recorded Rob Wood and Summer Shiflett talk and try to get Rob Wood thrown off the case. You think so, THX? That Ian and Melanie Pulaski lied about when they met? Now, Alice Gilbert, remember, y'all, she's the one that was in the church with Tammy. She was also a neighbor. I don't know how close, but Alice Gilbert says she and her husband reached out to visit Chad on October the 26th after Tammy's death. Chad said he would come to their house. He came over to our place and I made cookies. He came in and sat in the kitchen. We asked how he was doing. He said, I'm actually doing very good. He said he met the woman he was going to marry. Gilbert and her husband were shocked. Chad went on to say how beautiful Lori was and said they met at a conference in St. George. Well, didn't he tell his kids or somebody that he met Lori in Hawaii? So, Tammy Daybell dies October 19th, and by October 26th, he is sitting in someone else's house telling them that he has found the woman he's going to marry. They asked for her name, and Chad didn't want to say, but eventually he said Lori Vallow. And of course, we know he told others, Lori Ryan. He can't keep his shit straight, can he? Lori was not with Chad when she came to visit the Gilberts. Gilbert says she and her husband work at the temple on Tuesday night. They were waiting in a room on Tuesday night, and Chad tapped her on the shoulder and asked Gilbert to come in the hallway. Gilbert met Lori and her niece, y'all, Melanie Pulowski. It was awkward, Gilbert says. Wonder why Chad felt like it was no big deal, not even, a week to 8 days after his wife's death? Maybe, perhaps, it wasn't as awkward as some would think. I don't know. Do these people in this organized religion have a problem with this? I don't know. But she did say it was awkward. Chad brought Lori over to meet the Gilberts. They came in and sat on the couch. They were quite affectionate with each other, she recalls. It was abnormal for us to see Chad that way. His arm was around her. He had his arm over her legs. She was giggling and laughing. For my husband and I, we were embarrassed just because we hadn't seen Chad that way. They looked like teenagers. Can we just stop a minute? This woman is sitting there giggling and laughing, and those children are rotting in Chad Daybell's backyard. Just let that sink in. And Chad and Lori both know the children are murdered and that Tammy's murdered, and they're acting like teenagers, y'all. We're talking psychopathic, narcissistic, evil, diabolical. It's gross, says Miss DMC. It's disgusting, y'all. Absolutely disgusting. That's right, y'all. Neeson Z says so gross. Yeah, Janelle Murphy, let's not forget, at the time he's doing this, the children are still grieving over the loss of their mother. Emma's telling Gilbert that Chad just doesn't want nothing to do with them anymore. Oh my gosh. Elizabeth Gregory, it is this Alice Gilbert who served in the church with Tammy pretty much weekly. She was a neighbor. I don't know how close she lived, but the bottom line is Chad and Lori are over at their house within a little over a week. Chad and Lori are over there sitting on their couch, giggling. Chad's got his arm around Lori. He's got one arm on her legs. And these children have been murdered. Tammy's been murdered. Charles has been murdered. Now, Alice Gilbert asked Lori if she had been married. Lori said her husband died of a heart attack, y'all. Lori's telling this woman that Charles Vallow died of a heart attack. Chad said Lori recently lost a daughter, y'all. And Gilbert expressed her sympathies to Lori. Can you believe this shit? Gilbert says Chad was not flirtatious or affectionate with Tammy at all. Gilbert recalls asking Lori if she was used to the cold because in October of 2019, there was extreme hard early frost. The potato farmers were getting their harvest done early, so Gilbert remembers how cold it was. This was the week, y'all, of October the 26th of 2019. So 2021, That's just exactly 7 days after Tammy is murdered. Y'all know it was just a couple of days after Tammy's funeral, her quick funeral. And Chad Daybell was never like this with Tammy, y'all. Of course not, because Tammy Daybell was not a hooker. Tammy Daybell wasn't the type that would stand on a street corner and spread her legs and let people flick nickels at it. Chad told the Gilberts he was going to go to Hawaii to write a book. Chad said they were going to get married, but they didn't know when. They mentioned they were taking Chad's kids to Disneyland around Thanksgiving. Nothing was said of Lori's kids. Gilbert says, I had the impression that Lori had no other children, that she was an empty nester. I thought the daughter who had died was like an older daughter who died of cancer or illness or something. No mention of JJ at all, y'all. Don't you know? Don't you know? It's disgusting. Somebody needs to make sure when Lori and Chad go to prison to beat them senseless. It's so disgusting. An empty soul person, says Deb Wagner. You're damn right. No mention of Kobe either, says Mohawk Mom. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, he was. He was showing off his new trophy whore. It's blatantly obvious, says Goodwill Squatter. How can these people actually believe this crap, says the real Kim. Huh. Yeah, you think about it. This is a testimony where Lori and Chad are acting this way. Lori is confirming that her husband Charles Vallows died of a heart attack. The jurors have listened to this. Lori is saying all this. Chad's not saying anything to the contrary. The jurors are getting a bird's eye view of Lori and Chad's bullshit. Explain to me how Melanie Gibb is saying that Chad took JJ upstairs and came down with a scratch on his neck. David Warwick confirms this as well. And yet Chad Daybell's not telling this Gilbert woman that, yes, she also has a son named JJ. Why couldn't Chad have just said she has a son named JJ that she sent to Kay, the grandmother? It's disgusting. Sweet Shannon, it's a Alice Gilbert who was a neighbor of Chad and Tammy's, who also worked with Tammy in the church. And as soon as Chad has his funeral for Tammy, not a few days after that, he's bringing Lori to meet them at their house. After this visit, Chad and Lori came back after they got married. They returned to Idaho before the family California trip and stopped by the Gilberts to show them the wedding pictures. Gilbert believes this was around 2 weeks after the initial visit. Gilbert was shocked to see wedding pictures because they got married so quick. Now, stop for a minute. For those out here that believe Chad and Lori thought it was going to be the end of the world and all of this stuff, why do they have to come back and let these people know that they're married and all this? It's almost like they're reestablishing now. It's me and Lori. We're letting you know. We're letting you know that Lori and I are married now. Give me a break, y'all. It doesn't add up. It's interesting, is it not, that this Alice Gilbert will tell everyone sitting on the stand that she was shown these wedding photos, but back when Zulema was at the hospital when they brought Alex Cox in, She had known these wedding photos were out there, and yet she says she doesn't know Lori all that well. She didn't know where Lori was at. Give me a break, y'all. Alice Gilbert recalls Chad visiting her house by himself in February of 2019, y'all. February 2019. We know that this was around the time that things started to get in gear about basically whatever they were going to do to get toward murdering Charles Vallow. She was in the middle of a project and she walked him to the door. He stopped and said he had a vision that Tammy's time on earth was coming to an end, and it was fulfilled. He didn't know how or when, but he didn't see her living past the age of 50, says Alice Gilbert. Again, y'all, I've said this, and many of the Rays have as well. Who the hell talks like this? I mean, is this normal for people in an organized religion like this to talk about it? I've seen my spouse die. I mean, is this normal? I mean, KJ says everybody in the whole freaking world's going to die at some point, right? I mean, but I don't go around talking about, hey, y'all, my husband Wayne's going to die, and I've seen it. Give me a break. Give me a break. They find nothing weird about this. February of 2019, this Alice Gilbert. After Lori was arrested in Hawaii, Chad visited the Gilberts and asked if he could live in one of their spare bedrooms. He said his house was too crowded. Gilbert said they had a daughter coming to live with them and they didn't have room. When Lori's bond hearing was scheduled, Chad visited the Gilberts and asked if they would put their property up for bond. Let me repeat that, y'all. When Lori's bond hearing was scheduled, Chad visited Alice Gilbert and her husband and asked if they would put their property up for bond. The Gilberts said they would think about it, and Chad left. The next day, Chad texted and said he had arranged for a bondswoman to come and talk with them. So Chad Daybell's trying to get his hussy, his concubine, his whore, his hooker out of the jail cell when she got arrested. And he can't do it himself. This stupid ass seeing beyond the veil MF. He's got to ask these other people to put their house up so he can get access to his damn hooker. I can't believe this shit. This guy's actively trying to find the money to get his hooker out. And he's asking people to help him. And y'all recall, don't you, back when they set her bond when she got back to Idaho? These bonds companies didn't want to work with her because they was afraid because of her past actions of fleeing. She ran away from every damn thing she ever did. This time around, she wasn't going to get away with it. But Chad says he arranged for a bondswoman to come talk with him. Oh, yeah, married to paper. $1 million. Y'all remember the woman, beginning of March? She came out in the news. She was in Lori's little cell pod there. So Lori walked back from her hearing saying, well, now we're going to find out if this body's worth $1 million. The woman ain't worth shit. She ain't worth nothing. She's still sitting in there, ain't she? And the only reason Chad Daybell tried it first, because he was afraid that Lori would break at some point and spill the beans on her and his bullshit. And he didn't want to go down because guess what, y'all? At that time, they hadn't found the children's bodies yet. And Chad convinced her not to say anything because he felt like if they didn't find the children's bodies, they wouldn't have been able to keep her in jail forever. If she didn't produce the kids, they can't do it. They could have kept her in for a while, but the bottom line is she could have had everybody convinced, I'm a martyr. I'm in jail, won't tell them where my kids are because the government doesn't have a right to them. I want everybody to know I am the one that's being held in the jail cell because I won't tell them where my children are. And guess what? My children are safe, but the government doesn't deserve to know. And there are enough crazy-ass people in Idaho. Hell, you got Ammon Bundy, all of them down there that are probably rallied against all of the government wanting to keep her in jail. We're in a sidebar. Thomas objects to some of her questions, and I'm assuming this is about the bond hearing stuff. Well, it's a little too soon, too late, Thomas. Some of it's already been testified to. Let me grab a drink while we're on the sidebar. I'll be right back. I'm in my house. Right, Goodwill Squatter. This was February 2020. We know January of 2020, they went out to Chad's. There were several feet of snow on the ground. They did take stuff out of his house, but they didn't find the children because there was so much snow on the ground. And I guarantee you, January 2020, when they served that search warrant on Chad Daybell's property there, his house, they took all that stuff out of there, and they didn't find the kids. Chad told Lori, you just know it. See, they came on and I put a force field or something to that effect. They weren't going to discover, or you know what I'm saying? He wanted Lori to keep quiet. Even Rob Wood says that Lori almost spoke to them, but Chad talked her out of it. And the reason Chad talked her out of it was because Chad knew if she talked to him, then his ass was going down. He didn't give a shit at this point. And by the way, ultimately, when he was arrested after the children's bodies were found, did he give that damn hussy 1 red cent? He was the one with the privately held attorney. Lori had to get help from the government because that's how Lori is. Lori can't, she lives this lifestyle off the government, everything else. She doesn't better herself at all. John Shaver says, Lori is a Sith with a force field. Right, Jay. Chad Daybell's got some serious nerve asking this Gilbert couple to put their house up. I'll be damned. The only way I'd put my house up, y'all, my house would be for my children. I'm sorry, I wouldn't put it up for anybody else. Maybe, you know, my brothers and sisters or something like that, if I thought they were innocent. If I thought they were guilty, no. During his visit, Chad's visit to the Gilbert, y'all, Alice confronted Chad about the fact that he told her Lori's daughter had died. Chad denied telling her this. Alice knew the kids were missing and said to Chad, didn't Tylee deserve a life, a car, a boyfriend? Woo! Chad responded, she didn't like people and she didn't like me. Holy shit, y'all. Let's hear it again. Here we go, y'all. Listen. Alex confronted Chad about the fact that he told her Lori's daughter had died. And Chad told Alice that he didn't tell her this. And Alice knew the kids were missing and said to Chad, Didn't Tylee deserve a life, a car, a boyfriend? And what is Chad Daybell's response to that? He says, Tylee didn't like people, and she didn't like me. Alice was struck that Chad used the past tense. Wow. Wow, y'all. Boom, says Momo Shark. Oh my goodness. Wow, says Married to Paper. Oh my gosh. T.S. Jackson 72 says, I'm stunned. What excellent testimony, y'all. Boom, 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 says Terry Ward. Jaw just dropped on the floor, says Bismo Funyuns. Chad Daybell has the nerve to tell this woman. This was before. Oh my God. Gilbert then recalls overhearing Chad tell someone this. They think I killed my wife, and Blake has no further questions. But let's step back a minute. Chad tells this Alice Gilbert that Tylee didn't like people and she didn't like me. And Alex was struck that Chad used the past tense. Folks. Oh, can y'all believe that? Right, GMA Debbie. Open mouth, insert foot. Roxy says, I like this neighbor. Boom, under the jail they go, says Anna Brown. Drop, boom, Mother Bear says. Wow, good job, Alice, says Denise. Y'all, can y'all believe this testimony? Holy cow. Good, Alice, says Heather Strock. All right, y'all. So now we got Archie. Archie is cross-examining this Alice Gilbert. And he asked how Alice Gilbert got to know Melanie Gibb. And Gilbert says she didn't know Melanie, but she listened to podcasts with Melanie Gibb and Lori. Archie asked what kind of podcasts they were. Now, let's stop for a minute. I don't know if Nate's saying, Gilbert says she didn't know Melanie Gibb, but she listened to podcasts with Melanie Gibb and Lori. And Archibald asked what kind of podcasts they were. And Alice Gilbert says they were upbeat and positive podcasts. Encouragement. A lot of life in the podcasts, says Alice Gilbert. Okay. She didn't know Melanie, so what is she saying? That they were all listening to them together, maybe on a live stream or something? I don't know what she's meaning by that. She doesn't know Melanie Gibb, but she was listening to, what, Melanie Gibb and Lori? Huh? I don't know about y'all, but these podcasts, I think, play a major role from these people like Julie Rowe and all these other characters. I think it introduced a repetitive nature of trying to radicalize them, get them opened up, and get their minds weakened. Archie asked Alice Gilbert if she's aware of what Chad did for a living, and she says she knew Chad wrote books. She read Chad's last series before they moved to Rexburg. Gilbert says she wasn't sure about the books. She didn't talk much with him about the books. Gilbert says she never spoke with Chad about his visions, but her husband did sometimes at church. And I really don't know what to say to that right now. I'm just reading this blow by Nate Eaton. Chad is talking about his visions with her husband. Would her husband share Chad's talk with him? Would the husband be in church talking to Chad and Chad's telling him about his visions? and the husband come home and tell his wife Alice? I don't know. I just know there's a lot of this, people getting revelations, they're getting things on their own and everything, and I think that's what the problem is. It's not about, this is just my opinion, it's not about getting some kind of seeing beyond the veil premonition, a bad nightmare from David Warwick, or these revelations, getting your own and all this and that. I think if people would focus on what Jesus has to say, and Him alone, Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ. And if they focus on what Jesus is saying and not what they're coming up with in their own minds, that's an opinion. To each their own, people can believe what they want to believe, but it seems like these people curtailed their visions and beliefs and their revelations and stuff to itch their own ears and to give them fleshly pleasure. Elfo says Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And not only that, no one, absolutely no one goes to God Almighty without Him. And I think these people forgot that. In fact, I never heard any of it through all of this in terms of empirical, factual evidence that anyone was speaking of Jesus dying on the cross for the sins of the world. We know Kobe did in his testimony called Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world, and I was thankful to hear that. But it just seems like that Chad and others feel like they're these lowercase g's and they're the ones that need glorification. You know, let me tell you what, the only one deserving of glorification is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. These people want to come out here in this world and talk about, I was the Holy Spirit in a past on a different planet, or I was Jesus Christ, or Lori saying, I seen Jesus Christ face to face. Well, I'll tell you what, you're supposed to be glorified because if she thought she really saw Jesus Christ? No, it's all about Jesus Christ. It's not about what Lori sees. It's not what Chad sees or anyone else sees. Only what Jesus Christ sees for old KJ. Now, Archie says asked Gilbert if she spoke with Chad about the conferences he went to. She says she and her husband attended Preparing a People conference, y'all, in Rexburg and Boise. She believes she went to the one in Rexburg in 2018 and the one in Boise in 2019. Chad presented at both seminars and attempted to sell his books. Archie asked Gilbert if Chad's goal in talking about his near-death experiences was to sell books, and she says she thinks so. Archibald asked if the seminars were sanctioned or approved by the church, and Gilbert doesn't think so. Gilbert says she learned about Preparing a People after seeing a brochure in Rexburg. That's self-explanatory. You know, let me tell you something. If I was given, because I believe in Holy Scripture, the Holy Bible, where it talks about everyone is given different spiritual gifts. The measurements could be different and everything, but everyone gets spiritual gifts. And if I thought that I had a spiritual gift, would I want to charge for that? Or would I want to share that spiritual gift to do what? Glorify Jesus Christ, or to help someone find Jesus Christ, because I can't save nobody. I can't. Only God Almighty can do that. Many are called, but few are chosen. So it is what it is. And these are my beliefs. And there are people on here that have differing beliefs. Some of y'all don't even have. So we've got atheists. I love and respect everyone, regardless of what your belief system is. And that's the truth. I love people that don't like me. I love everyone, or at least try to anyway. But I'll tell you something. I do not love the behaviors that come out that equal into murder. Archie asked if the subject matter at the conference was approved by the church, and Gilbert says no. Then what was Gilbert doing there? What was Alice Gilbert doing there if it wasn't approved by the church? Wouldn't she want to do what the church wanted her to do? There were all kinds of topics discussed. Fossils, the Book of Mormon, positivity, food storage, etc. Did some of the topics focus on the end of the world, Archie asked. And Gilbert responds, I think Chad's did. Well, I'll tell you, if it's not sanctioned by the church, this conference, and they're talking about the Book of Mormon there, it's almost scary to think what these people were talking about outside of, I guess, what you'd call the church authorities. Archie asked Gilbert if Chad had spoke about the Church of the Firstborn, and she says not in the seminars, but she heard Chad talk about it in conversations with who, y'all? Her husband. Sometimes you just nod and listen, but again, you have no idea. You know, don't y'all see something that just seems to be repeated? People are open to listening to crazy ass stuff. They're just going to nod and listen. They're not going to say, this doesn't sound like something I'm learning in my religion. I better stay away from this person. No, they keep listening, don't you know? Archie asked Alice Gilbert if the Church of the Firstborn is a splitter group of the LDS Church. Blake objects and says the question is beyond the scope, and Boyce sustains it. That means Boyce ain't going to allow the question. Archie asked Gilbert if Chad was a weird guy. She says he was, but there's a lot of weird people, says this Alice Gilbert. Archie asked Gilbert if she looks to Chad for spiritual guidance, and she says she did not. Archie asked this Alice Gilbert her thought, if Gilbert thought Lori was enamored with Chad, and Gilbert says they were definitely in love, and Archie has no further questions. And let's just get for real, y'all. This woman wants to testify that she saw love. Folks, none of it was love, in my opinion. God is love. God does love, but God is love. There is no love in this at all. And I guess if people themselves can get lust and love mixed up in their own personal lives, other people can see it and think, well, they look so in love. I get that. But I just want to be clear about my view on it. No love between Chad and Lori. No love between any of these cult members, Melanie Pulowski and Ian and David Warwick, Melanie Gibb, Zulema and Alex. None of that was love. Now, Blake has some redirect questions. Did Chad appear enamored with Lori? And the response was absolutely. And Blake says, and Chad was more enamored with Lori than he was with Tammy. And Gilbert says yes. And Blake has nothing further. Gilbert is released from the witness stand, y'all. And it is now 11:29 in almost noon there in Boise. So I don't know if they're going to call another witness. They are. Guess who's coming to the stand, y'all? Alice Gilbert's husband, Todd Gilbert, is now called to the stand, and Todd is married to Alice. And maybe Todd will shed some light on what him and Chad have discussed. What's interesting is he goes within days of Tammy's funeral and brings Lori over there to their house, and still feels comfortable enough after all that to go back to them and ask them to put their house up for bond, that tells me something. So again, y'all, Alice Gilbert has left the stand, and she has testified to some good stuff. Don't get me wrong, but now we got Todd Gilbert, the husband of Alice Gilbert, who's coming to the stand. Yes, Evangeline Light. I love the old saying, I am a sinner saved by grace. That's how I identify y'all. OKJ is a sinner saved by grace. That's what, you don't earn your way to heaven. Okay? It is a free gift of grace by God Almighty. That is in Holy Scripture. Okay? Now, faith without works is dead. But the bottom line is you can't buy your way to heaven through tithing. You can't buy your way to heaven through attending churches all the time. The bottom line is it is a free gift from God Almighty. And why would it be any other way? Because he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on that cross for the sins of the world, past, present, and future. So it would have to be a gift of grace. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever just believeth in him shall never perish, but have everlasting life. And when we're talking about never perish, we're not talking about, because we know I can only speak for myself. I was born in sin. The wages of sin are death through this physical body of mine. But the gift of life is through Jesus Christ, Almighty God. That's what I believe. And I hope I'm not making anyone feel uncomfortable, because OKJ would never hurt anyone, would never murder anyone, would never judge anyone out here in the world. I will, though, say this. If I was in a store and I saw someone steal a candy bar right in front of me, would it be judging them by saying they're a thief? No. You're calling it like it is. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. A lot of Christians, they take that do not judge, that God is the ultimate judge, which is true. They have taken it to the step where they can't even call something what it is. Someone is stealing a candy bar and I call them a thief. That's not judging them. Judging them is when God judges them for stealing that damn candy bar. You see what I'm saying? Unless they confess with the mouth that they've done that and ask the Lord to forgive them of that. I don't know why I'm going off on this tangent, y'all. Please forgive me. I don't mean to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Okay, now, Todd knew Chad was an author, and when the Gilberts moved into the area in March of 2017, they got to know the Daybells. Todd often interacted with Chad. They saw each other once a week in the yard and once a week at church. Now, Todd Gilbert has read some of Chad's books, and Chad spoke with his neighbor about his dreams and visions and characters in his book. Chad said the books were fictional and patterned after his visions. And I think many of the reason I'll just speak for myself. I believe Chad was getting away with all this by saying they were fiction books, but he was telling certain people behind the scenes that they were real. Gilbert says Chad started to teach him religious-related topics. If they were standard LDS topics, I agreed with him. If they weren't, Gilbert ignored them. In February of 2019, as Chad was leaving the Gilbert's house, Chad said, "I don't know if I should tell you this or not, but I've had a vision that Tammy's going to die and move on before her 50th birthday." And this was February of 2019, y'all. There's a lot of belief systems out here in the world, y'all, but it's just crazy, really. Now, this Mr. Gilbert here went with his wife to Chad Daybell's house on the morning Tammy Daybell died. Gilbert says Chad seemed businesslike, more than if someone had just lost their companion. Things were already planned out and ready to go for the funeral, says this Gilbert man. Common sense, says Yin Yang. Total premeditation, says Molly's mom. Another blind LDS follower, says Cindy. They were best friends, says Tennessee Queen. Yeah, Paisley Dreams. Chad did. He warned everybody of Tammy's passing. And none of them want to put two and two together. I'm assuming when they heard Tammy died, they probably thought, oh, Chad told me this back then. He must really have the visionary power. He must really see revelation. He must be seen beyond the veil. Give me a break. I mean, it makes sense, don't it? A serial killer can kind of premeditate things before it happens, tell everybody, I'm seeing this in visions, and when it happens, they're not thinking he's a serial killer. I guess it's a template for future murderers, don't y'all think? Just go out here and tell everybody your belief system, that you see someone that you love or someone you're supposed to love anyway, and that they're going to die before they're 50, and then when they do, you can write it off that you just seen it in a vision, that you really wasn't part of the murder and cover-up of the whole damn thing. Give me a break. Now, the Gilberts arrived at Chad's house around 8:15, 8:30 a.m. Todd mentioned the vision Chad had told him earlier in the year actually happened. There you go, y'all. Gilbert says Chad turned his back to his kids and somewhat whispered to Todd, yes, it did. So here we are. This Gilbert fella's telling him, hey, Chad, your vision came true. And then Chad says, yes, it did. So not only is Chad get away with premeditated murder on his wife by telling people beforehand that she's going to die, but now he gets the kudos from a fellow church-going member there that, yes, his gifts, his powers, they have been confirmed. I don't mean to laugh, but it's just so hilarious, really. Yeah, John Shepherd, Chad does speak like a damn robot. Let me shut the door. The cat just came through it, and it's kind of cold outside. Okay, Jay's little toes are getting cold, y'all, and I'm fully dressed with socks and shoes on. Renee Price says, so stupid. He's got the cooties too, says CIM. Oh, Lord. Now, Gilbert says he observed Tammy at church. She never appeared to be having failing health. Chad and Tammy often sat up in the front of the building. They were there as a family. As time went on, they slowly moved back. And by the time of June of 2019 happened, they were sitting clear in the back. They seemed a little distant from each other, and Chad was talking less to me about stuff. So June of 2019, y'all, that's a month, sometime around a month before Charles Vallow was murdered. That way Chad can get access to that poontang, don't you know? He's got to get that dang wuss. He's got to get that little, you know what I'm talking about, y'all? He wants to be the only one tagging that of Lori's. You know what I'm saying? That's what he's wanting. And he's not wanting Tammy. He's never showed affection toward Tammy. And Lori wants to do all those things that Chad always dreamed of. He wants a hooker. That's what he wants. He said people talking about preparations were getting old, so he was taking a break. Yeah, I don't know what he meant by that. Let me go here. It seemed a little distant from each other, and Chad was talking less about stuff. He said people talking about preparations was getting old, so he was taking a break. Well, I don't want to, am I supposed to say vagina? I say things like nookie or something like that. We're all adults here. We're adults here. There are no children allowed. I've got my audience set. Come on, y'all. Just an old country girl. If you're offended, you don't have to be here. I hope that I'm not offending anyone, but let's just get for real. We see commercials today. Commercials for freaking everything that show all this slutty, snotty stuff. TV shows and everything else. And I bring up the word poontang. Yeah. Oh, so offensive. After Tammy's funeral, Chad told this Gilbert guy that he was moving in with a friend who had an apartment on Pioneer Road. At Tammy's funeral, Gilbert says Chad didn't seem sad. He seemed like he could handle everything okay. And then in the funeral when he spoke, which I thought was odd too, because most people don't do that when their spouse dies, he did show some emotions and spoke for some time. Oh, he had to sell it to everybody. And he's telling this fella that he's staying at Pioneer Road. Folks, he's over there he's doing it to it on that 4-poster bed of Lori's. And Alex, he's got to hang out with Alex too. We've seen testimony in this trial where the freaking law enforcement's driving up on the welfare check, and Chad and Alex are unloading stuff into Lori's garage. And all this stuff where Chad, Lori, and Alex were together all along. Tennessee Queen calls it a wampus cat. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's funny. That is a wampus cat. Oh my gosh. a taco saltita? Well, we know Alex liked to go to Del Taco. I guess Chad liked his taco too, don't y'all think? It was one of them soft shell tacos. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I've been sitting at this computer all morning. Kitty, 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 kitty. Oh, Lord. Okay, now let's stop. Okay, y'all are getting me distracted. A few days after Chad moved out, the Gilberts called and said they wanted to bring him some pizza at his new apartment to see how he was doing. These neighbors are really nosy, don't y'all agree? Or they were really close to him. They wanted to bring him some pizza at his new apartment, and Chad said he would come to their house instead. He showed up an hour late and ate some cookies. He said he had a girlfriend named Lori Vallow, and Gilbert had heard Lori's name before because he had listened to podcasts with her, Melanie Gibb, and Jason Mao. Y'all remember that? Jason Mao, warrior up. We got a warrior up. Jason Mao saying, yes, I was in the temple, and Lori walked in, and our eyes met, and I just knew in that moment, when I looked her in the eye, that she was a gatherer. So I had to be sure to let her and Melanie Gibb hook up because they were so like-minded, don't you know? And Melanie Gibb wants to say she didn't hear about any of this crazy ass stuff until Lori and Chad started teaching her it. But Jason Mouse saying that Melanie Gibb and Lori need to get together because they're like-minded. Bingo. Bam. A few days later, the Gilberts met Chad, Lori, and Melanie Pulaski in the Rexburg Temple, y'all. So the Gilberts, Alice and her husband there, met Chad, Lori, Melanie Pulaski at the Rexburg Temple, and Chad introduced the Gilberts to his girlfriend. It was a short visit. And again, y'all, Melanie Pulaski was there the whole time. She was at the castings. She would go visit Lori before she moved to Rexburg. She was there. Melanie Pulaski was at the same church building when Melanie Gibb and Lori arranged to meet, because they talked on the phone before meeting. The first time, Melanie Gibb says Melanie Pulaski was there. Melanie Pulaski was there the whole time, along with Melanie Gibb. Zulema came in there. She was in the same ward as that church with Melanie Gibb. Oh yeah, y'all, you know it. Around 2 to 3 nights later, after meeting Lori and Melanie Pulaski at the temple, Gilbert says Chad and Lori both came to the Gilberts' house. We spoke about how they were getting along and they seemed to be going well at this point. Gilbert says the biggest thing he noticed was that Chad and Lori were acting like a couple of teenagers who were first in love, holding hands, sitting close to each other. Chad was rubbing her leg. I thought that was odd, as his spouse had just passed a week and a half ago. Gilbert had never seen Chad act like that with Tammy. It's disgusting, y'all. Really. I don't know what's worse. I don't know, y'all. I just don't know how to say this. But if I had a friend, say I was attending a church, I don't know what all that is about, but I'm saying, and then that happened, and they immediately, like a week later, bring some over and they're acting in love and stuff. Why would I keep wanting to have something to do with them? Why would it wouldn't sit right with me, y'all. It just wouldn't. And by the way, Chad's been telling these Gilberts that at least once or more than one time that Tammy was going to die before she's 50. Did he tell him he had a second segment to his life? Did he tell him, because he can see beyond the veil, that this damn hooker is going to come into his life? Right. Yeah, I think so, Miss DMC. But that the neighbors were nosy. But think about it like this. Chad could have brushed them off when they said, hey, we want to bring you a pizza to the apartments that you're staying at now. And he says, no, I'll come there. He could have started brushing them off and not having nothing to do with them anymore. But he keeps going back, even to the point where he's asking them to put their own home up for bond for his hooker. And yet you've got Emma, his own daughter, saying that, crying and saying she misses her mom and that her dad doesn't want nothing else to do with the kids. Married to Paper says he needed those neighbors. Now, Chad said he was going to move to Hawaii because he had a friend who wanted him to help write a book. Chad said he was going to marry Lori. And he says when Christ told them to get married. Gilbert recalled Lori saying she had a previous husband who died of a heart attack in December. Oh, goodness. We asked her if she had any children, and she said she had many, Gilbert recalls. Chad said Lori had a daughter who just passed away. Chad never corrected or said anything different after Lori said that about her daughter. Chad and Lori never said anything about Lori having a minor son. Around Thanksgiving, Chad and Lori visited again and said they just got married. They showed the Gilberts all of their wedding photos. Rachel Carter says those neighbors are lucky to be alive. Well, if you want to know the truth, I think you're right on that, but I also think these neighbors are just as creepy. I'm sorry. They're just as creepy. I know these neighbors are giving some really good testimony, but I'm just telling y'all, these neighbors hit me creepy. I'm sorry. That's just the way I see it. Chad told the Gilberts he and Lori were taking Chad's kids to Disneyland. They never mentioned taking Lori's kids to Disneyland. The Gilberts never saw any children belonging to Lori. I mean, Donna Donald, am I the only one? I mean, listen, this is how I do. You know, when I read things or find out about things where people are actually doing these actions and stuff, and you're hearing this, in my mind, and this is how my mind works, I think about, well, what if I was the one going through this? If I was the Gilbert and someone was coming over here and saying all this stuff. Yeah, you could even strip away the religious aspect and just look at the just bare bones of bringing in another woman not less than a week after you're buried someone, and you'd had a and me as a Gilbert, my husband who's a Gilbert, had a relationship with Tammy and Chad. It's weird. It's something doesn't add up about it. It's almost like these people just want to accept whatever, and or at least take their word for it. Maybe I'm just one of these skittish people. Maybe I'm a paranoid person. I don't know. Again, when I think about all these people and how they behaved, whether they're in the inner circle or people outside of it, it seems really creepy to me. Now, Gilbert says Chad told him that his kids felt good about Lori even though they were missing Tammy. Chad told Gilbert 2 or 3 times that Tammy visited him in spirit and was fine with everything. So Chad is telling this Gilbert fella that Tammy has visited him 2 or 3 times and she's just fine. She's just fine with everything. You think Tammy was fine with the bruises all over her arms and on her chest? You think Tammy was fine that, you know what, I love my children so much, but I've got to die. I'm going to leave my children behind. Forget that I was training for a marathon. I'm going to go to Chad in spirit and say, Chad, it's okay, Chad, that you and Alex murdered me. Or, Chad, it's okay that you murdered me, Chad. It's okay because I see now that you needed a hooker and prostitute to take my place, Chad. Give me a break. Her mission was complete on this earth and she could move on, says Chad. Isn't that just like a man? I don't know about this religion or anything, but if you think about it, she'd been used up by Chad. She couldn't give him any more than she could. She had gotten that full-time job as a librarian. She was the breadwinner. She was bringing home the bacon. Her kids were now adults. Her and Chad were going to have to live out their lives. That it wasn't going to be about small children anymore. It was going to be just Tammy and Chad. But see, she'd already completed her mission here on earth, according to Chad Daybell, because number one, he'd met a hooker. He met a whore, a concubine, And he wanted to continue to get himself off sexually with someone else because he didn't have it for her. I mean, according to these people here, he wasn't affectionate toward Tammy. I mean, we've seen a couple of pictures of Tammy and Chad where he's got his arm around her or something like that for the picture, but all these people confirm he was not affectionate toward his wife. He'd lost that horny feeling. I've lost the horny feeling. Oh, that horny feeling. I've lost that horny feeling. Now I need Lori, the hussy. Oh, yeah. Tammy told Chad to comfort the kids, and she thought it was fine, y'all. That's what Chad is telling this Gilbert guy. Give me a break. Give me a break. After Lori was arrested and brought back to Rexburg, Chad visited the Gilberts, y'all. Without going into the details about why he was there, do you recall a conversation taking place about his prior statement about Lori having a daughter who had passed away? Blake asks. And Gilbert recalls his wife, Alice Gilbert, there asking about Tylee. And he said Tylee, didn't really like him too much. And she kind of stayed away. And there you go, y'all. There you go. Tylee didn't like Chad Daybell. Isn't that what we thought anyway? Tylee didn't like any of these nut jobs. Tylee wasn't going to conform and think of her mom as the queen of the 144,000. Tylee was not going to put up with Lori taking her money. Tylee was not going to put up with some man walking in saying he's the king of the 144,000. Does anyone believe that if Tylee was still alive, that Chad Daybell would have took JJ upstairs by himself and come back down with a scratch on his neck? Tylee would have never allowed it. Tylee would have protected JJ, and they knew that. Tylee wasn't going to be part of their new inner circle cult, and they took her money and they took her life. We are breaking for lunch. The defense will cross-examine this Gilbert fella as we get back from lunch. Y'all, let's get us something to eat. Let's get our chores done, run our errands. We'll be back in an hour. I love you all. A lot's going on. We're looking to see if Melanie P. and Ian's going to testify. Let's get back in an hour, all of you. Thanks for the comments. We'll see you in an hour. Keep on looking.